Because you got powerful legs. How'd you get the physique? Was it gym or how'd you get the physique?
I've always been.
She's actually not got powerful legs. Do you shower in your dressing room? Do you have a shower on the day of a fight or not? Tell us about the tattoos.
Shut the fuck up, you little prick.
But then I've got the Phoenix.
Hey, prick.
And I'll take it from Bob every day of the week.
Absolute disgrace.
That's your knowing mind.
Move him out of here, Darren.
Ricky Hatton didn't go over for his fighter because he risked getting abducted and sold into sexual
I never said that.
Both have been rape victims. I'm not watching Frank Buglioni live on a Saturday night. You're out of your mind.
Jesus Christ, get yourself a life.
He's actually a priest.
Yeah.
It's because his brother John Fury eye gouged him.
What have I told you all this time? He's going to end up sucked out, fucked out, looking for a handout.
Boxing nutters messenger group. I'm gonna be the king.
J-Pump. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome, folks, to the 612th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse, which you can find at 8 o'clock on YouTube every Sunday in the UK and at 12 Pacific time. And then the next day you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Be sure to give us a rating. Give us that thumbs up if you like what we're doing. And if you like our style of fun, and especially the people in the chat who are far more endemic of it these days than we might be, you should check out our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Boxing Asylum. And you'll find different levels there. And a couple of them will get you into the Boxing Nutters Messenger group, where we have all sorts of fun. We discuss boxing. We discuss arts. We discuss culture. It's a meeting of the minds in there with some of the brilliant people ever produced on both sides of the pond. It's just amazing that in Capitano, like three of us who are on this continent, that, you got three brilliant people, but lucky you motherfuckers in the Boxing Asylum Nutters Messenger group. And so yeah, get in on that fun if you want. Patreon.com/Boxing. We're here this week to talk about some heavyweights. We're going to kick it off over here from Las Vegas in a fight that was filled with hug and love and over-the-top right hands and diving in with your head. A southpaw short guy versus an orthodox tall guy. Why didn't we see this shit show coming? The script practically wrote itself. 98-92 two times to Richard Torrez, or 98-91 considering a point deduction, and 97-92 once in his favor over Guido Vionello, who I thought probably deserved more than that. I kind of thought that the point deduction might have come into play on one of the cards on there. I thought it was, closer than 98-91. 2 rounds seemed to kind of given Guido no respect whatsoever, who I thought when he found moments to finally hold his ground, definitely was able to catch Torres with some shots. And Torres just doesn't have what it takes, I think, at the weight and his style. It's kind of weird. It's kind of sloppy, head first, and it's going to not produce a lot of aesthetically pleasing results against these tall guys. But Justin, why don't you give me your thoughts on the fight? I was kind of underwhelmed in the first 5 or 6 rounds, but it did get a little bit more entertaining down the stretch.
I think you summed it up. It was just ugly because all they did for most of the fight was, like you said, Torres would just kind of put his head down, come flying in. Vionello would hold him. They would kind of grapple for a while, hit each other in the back of the head. The referee would break it, and they do the exact same thing again. But I agree. I think Torres definitely won the first 2 or 3 rounds. And I think Vionello, there was one round, I think it was round 7, where he actually started to have success. 6
I
or
thought
7.
he buzzed him. I thought he buzzed
Yeah.
Torres.
Finally, for the first time, Vionello was actually timing him coming in. And he landed like 4 or 5 good right hands and caught Torres a bunch there in that one round. I thought maybe Vionello was starting to, like you said, buzz him. I think he was starting to get to him. And then all of a sudden, the next round, the fight went back to exactly the way it was all the other rounds. So Vionello had like a couple of good rounds where he looked like he was doing something, but it was just, like you said, it was just ugly. There was nothing fun to Torres. I never thought he was going to do anything in the heavyweight division. I mean, yes, he's American, and yes, he's got the Mexican-American backing, so I see why Top Rank. He won a silver medal. But I'll say the same thing. When you see him absolutely splattered by Jalalov, and that Jalalov is the size of the heavyweights that he was going to be facing, and they use bigger gloves in the Olympics, and he still got completely laid out. He takes too many shots for this level. Torres is going to get hurt. I mean, I hate to say it, but he's going to get knocked out pretty badly because he's just not big enough. Maybe 20 years ago, Torres could have stayed with some of these guys, but at 6'2", about 235, 240, I think that's what he comes in. That's just not big enough when you're going against. And Torres, it's not like Torres has this like hellacious shot.
He has long arms, right? Like
Yeah.
that. He has long arms for a shorter guy, kind of like a Kawi kind of guy. And he throws these shots that most guys couldn't land over the top in a clinch. Like, to be fair, it's a fairly effective, if not absolutely ugly style as a small heavyweight.
Well, Torres is he's going to get some chances just because I think Top Rank is going to keep pushing him until he loses. I guess now, he's already fought Vionello, so why not put him in versus what? Get a Jogba in there. I don't really know where. You know what? I think put him in versus Anderson. Let's just end it. Neither guy is really, I don't think, going anywhere. So let's just have them go, and the loser, I wouldn't even bring them to the zone with me.
Well, I would imagine Torres' next fight is going to be something significant because there's a fair chance that you'd have to think it'll be on a Turkey Al-Sheikh card because the Top Rank deal is ending in August. So maybe one more with Top Rank, but after that, he's going to be thrown into deep waters.
Yeah, because
they don't fuck around.
There's no Torres. I would say he needs an easy touch, but we just summed him up. There's nobody out there that out of the top 10 guys that you would say, oh, I think Torres has him, because Vionello is a serviceable journeyman type guy.
Gatekeeper, I think, is more accurate.
And Torres, it was just, and I think the height did have something to do with it, but still, that's going to be every fight for him. And yeah, Torres is what he is. I would like for him to do well because right now American heavyweight boxing is just trash. There's nobody really that you can hang your hat on. Wilder held it. Say what you want to about Wilder, but he was the American scene the whole time he was there. And there's no, I never thought Anderson was going to be that guy.
Andy Ruiz kind of, he got the talk show circuit after he knocked out Joshua and shit like that.
The thing that, I know this is just me, and this is not a race thing. This is nothing that, but Andy Ruiz was never built to be an American. They never talked about that. He's born and raised, but that wasn't he was from Mexico. Let's just put it that way. But I'm talking about
they did try to play it that way. Well, there is something just with the affinity in the United States of the big black American heavyweight, right?
Exactly.
It's all the nostalgia. I guarantee you on a Saturday night, fucking if Ali, Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Ron Lyle, George Foreman, if they were in the ring on a Saturday night during the 70s, do you know what all the Ku Klux Klansmen were doing on that Saturday night? They were watching those motherfuckers.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Anderson we all knew. Everybody watches this and gets on the WhatsApp knows that Anderson was not going to be the guy. But
no,
he
was trying to bet Bacoli against him.
But Anderson looked the part, and that's the problem. And it's just, we can get into this. I'm not going to get into this whole American heavyweight. Me and you both know how it is. Boxing is just, if you're a 6'4" plus athlete, you're not going into boxing in America. That's just not going to. That is not even close to your consideration of a sport that you're going to look into being that big. And if you're never going to, and then if you do get into it, you're going to be a Mitchell. You're late in life. You're not. That's something that boxing doesn't matter how much money you can make. Does it over here? It is the main sports, and that's just the way it is. We don't get those guys anymore.
If you're 6'4", 6'5", and athletic, they're either gonna fucking keep you around 225, or they're gonna bulk you up to 350 pounds, and you're playing football.
Yep, that's it. So.
Yeah, it was. I think it was kind of interesting, Des, in like a role reversal, and I guess that's the kind of funny thing about the career of Guido Vionello is, he got beaten by Johnny Rice in a fight he was winning with a cut over his head, and now he's kind of developed some of those veteran tactics and stuff like that. But in his last fight against Makhmudov, he was basically able to win because he was the superior athlete to Makhmudov. And now in a reversal of roles, I think ultimately the only reason he lost this fight is because Richard Torrez Jr. is a superior athlete to Guido Vionello.
I think Vionello was a perfect opponent for Torres. He's big and he looks impressive, and he's an Olympian himself. He's a European, so there's a bit of a cut-off distance between the two markets. The American public have really got something to get behind with Torres, but there's an awful lot of Italians out in America that might be interested and have some skin in the game with Vionello. I think it was a good match for Torres, and I don't think he's too small for being a heavyweight. He touches over 17 stone. He's heavier than what Alexander Usyk is. I think his weight might be right. A 6'2" is a bit short in today's market, but he can.
That's
get
how
around
tall Holyfield was.
Yeah, and well, I'm not, and we know Holyfield was an all-time great, and Torres got some way to go. But you're quite right. The height can be done. He can work with that height, and the weight is okay. I think Torres' problem is he's probably got to do an awful lot of work under a microscope, and guys like Deontay Wilder that were much more technically deficient than Torres did it all off camera for about 35, 40 fights, and they went on the road and had their sort of 8, 9, 10 fights a year. And by the time we saw Wilder, he still wasn't very polished, but we had something that we liked about him, or the American market had something they liked. With Torres, we're seeing that on our screens. He's signed with Top Rank. His fights are all on TV. He's under that microscope. Now, if you look at Torres' career as an amateur, he was incredibly successful as a junior, like incredibly successful. But that really doesn't surprise me, because he was probably that big kid that didn't have many fights to win a national title. He didn't have many fights to win a World Juniors. And some of the guys he was fighting, because when you go up to that super heavyweight division, anything sort of 14 to 21, you're not quite sure what you're going to get. It's not like the middleweights or the welterweights or the lightweights. Sometimes you get big kids that dropped out of football or dropped out of rugby, and they tried boxing, and within 12 fights, they're now representing their country, going to major events. Point in case, Deontay Wilder goes to the Olympics on 12 bouts and medals. So Torres had an awful lot of success as a junior, but then as he became a senior, although he did medal in Tokyo and got a silver, his dominance hasn't been so he hasn't been so effective. So what we're seeing, and I hate to use the expression, but it really does apply to Torres. What we're seeing with Torres is a kid learning on the job, and he's incredibly active, but it's under a microscope. And I think guys like Justin, who are a lot closer to it than me, will look at guys like Gerard Anderson or maybe Jermaine Franklin, or even a Miller, and think, no, we've got better heavyweights here. But I think there's a development process with Torres, and I think if we can wait another 12 to 18 months and get him somewhere where Deontay Wilder was, around the 25, 30 fight mark, I think you might have a very comfortable, very assured heavyweight boxer who knows how to manage his weight properly, who knows how to fight for his height, At the moment, I'm seeing him with Vionello last night. He fights like a smaller guy. He's almost drawing Vionello in. He wants to work off that lead jab and counter over the top of it and fire back. He is a puncher. He is aggressive, but he's still finding all that out at the minute. So, in conclusion with Torres, I think you guys have got something, but I just think it's very early days, and he's unfortunate that Aram signed him up and he's on Top Rank shows, and it's quite weighty. There's a microscope hanging over him. So I think in the next 12 months we might see a bit more from Torres, but it's a bit early yet to judge him.
Yeah, he's just it's a man in a weird place with an odd style. And rather than getting in like he does and just smothering things, I would prefer that he tries to hold the outside and then and kind of feints, does something that forces his opponent to step in, give up their height, and at least start at mid-range, because that was not aesthetically pleasing. And it's one of the things that you got to do if you're trying to attack the attention of the casual audience is you have to be entertaining, and that was not necessarily something that fight qualified as.
But like heavyweights are a real funny one because their amateur record doesn't really tell a true story. Like, don't get me wrong, with Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe and Evander, I know Evander wasn't a heavyweight, but you know where I'm going with this. With them guys, you knew what you was getting. It did what it said on the tin. But with guys like David Price, Audley Harrison, with guys like Joe Joyce, Fraser Clark, all the guys we're seeing coming off these elite sports programs, I've said it before, they're like lions brought up in a zoo, and they're being let out into the wild. And it's the first time they've got to really go hunting for their food. And I just think that, we saw it last night with Delicious Ori. They tell us he's a big puncher. They tell us he's a big talent. And when you see it and you go, I've just seen this kid for like 12 minutes, there's loads to do. So I think Torres is a lot better than he's a lot better than perhaps what the casual fan might think of him. But I think us guys that are boxing fans have got a little bit more of an educated eye. I can just see there's a lot to work with Torres, but he has to get his weight right. He has to learn how to fight at his weight. He has to learn how to be the smaller guy in there and to be effective as a smaller guy. But that does take time, especially when, as a kid, all your life you've been the biggest one on that side of the draw. And I just think he has to just, for the next 18 months, remember, it's only been a couple of years since he's been a pro. He's been very active. And I understand why they're bringing the Vionello in, because if you give him to a Charles Martin or a Deontay Wilder, then where does he go? It's only ways up from there. Then you've got to fight Andy Ruiz, or you've got to fight a Franklin. And them guys have probably got too much for him right now. So I think you've got to match him right. And I think they will do at Top Rank.
Well, I'll say this. I'm sorry.
No, if you could just get it right in the next 12 to 18 months, I think you guys are going to have something, or at least something you can say, well, now we've got a real good body work we can assess him on. Go on, Just.
I think Matt's right. I don't think he's going to get that time. I don't think Top Rank's going to. I think if with them signing these new deals and stuff, I don't think he's going to have that advantage of them saying, you know what, he's pretty much Top Rank's only heavyweight they're really bringing to the table that has any upside, honestly. So I don't think he's going to get that. I don't think he's going to have that time to learn and do another 18 months. I think it's now. I really don't believe they're going to give him that. I don't think that time's going to come where I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be given the opportunity to go back and say, you know what, you learned this versus Vionello. Let's put you in versus another guy in that area and keep moving. I don't think that.
That's a different conversation. If they're going to rush him or say, look, you've had 2 years, 2.5 years. He's only been a pro for 2 years now. So if they're going to say, look, we now want to see you with a Jermaine Franklin, or we're going to put you in with Gerard Anderson, winner, loser goes home. If that's the case, I still fancy Torres in them fights, but I don't fancy Torres in the fights. Perhaps say, I don't fancy him against a Jermaine Franklin, but I fancy him against Deontay Wilder. I wouldn't fancy him
this version of Wilder,
yeah. I wouldn't fancy him with Andy Ruiz, but I might fancy him with Gerard Anderson. So I think you have to pick it right. And I think if you've invested a lot of money in this kid, and he does tick a lot of boxes, and he has got something about him, I don't see why you wouldn't hang on another 12 months. Now, they've been patient in the past with Deontay Wilder. They was patient with Andre Ward. Normally, American broadcasters are patient with their medalists. I'll be surprised, Justin. I mean, you're a lot closer to it than me. I'll be surprised, mate, if they didn't say, no, go on, we're going to give you 2025 to have a free run at this. We're going to get you out 8 to 12 times. We're going to keep you really
I'm just
busy.
saying if he's going on the zone, like the deal they're talking about. I mean, and everybody involved in that, I just don't see where they're going to say, you know what, we're going to. Hopefully they do. I don't see it. I mean, like the guy they should fight him in is like, that Cassius Chaney guy. That's the first guy that come to mind. He's got an okay record. He's pretty big. He's somebody Torres should beat, but those are like you're right. Those are the kind of learning fights. Put him in versus those guys. But I mean, if you look at his career, Vionello, this was like the biggest. He went from fighting absolute nothing to Vionello. So I think that's one reason why last night the fight was a little ugly, is because the step up, even though Vionello is not, the best in the world, compared to what he's fighting, Vionello was an incredible step up compared to the guys he had been fighting.
Well, he's not like a stiff chump either. I mean, like he has the tennis background with his family. He's legitimately athletic, in a heavyweight kind of way.
Especially compared to the trash he's fought. This is like not. I mean, look at the guy. If you go back in his record, the guys he fought are god awful. But I mean, he's fighting like 6 foot tall, like 350-pound men as of like 3 or 4 fights ago. So this was So you got to give him. We'll see. I mean, you got to give him a pass on this fight being ugly. He won. He didn't really take any damage. I think he was getting to Vionello a little bit late. I think especially that 9th or 10th round. If that had been a 12-round fight, he would have stopped Vionello.
Possibly, yeah. Because he started hurting him.
I think he was starting to hurt him pretty good at the end. So yeah, we'll see. Like I said, I'm just looking for any American guy. Wilder. I mean, Wilder. We had a good run, but we just don't. It just doesn't produce here anymore.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, with the deal coming up with the zone and all that, I honestly think if you maybe not his next fight, but I would be looking at the Queensbury stable of fighters if you want to know what's possible for Torres in the fall or the winter of this year. I think that's where you're talking about, and how does he match up against some of those guys that they could put him in with? That's an interesting question, and honestly, I think that's a fair question too, because at the end of the day, they're all just fighting domestic competition, and they're looking for a step up on the international scene.
Get him TKV.
Yeah, we'll get into that. That was a weird fight. But so that was definitely an odd fight to watch. It had its moments, but Torres, he's a work in progress. I don't know what that ceiling is. I just have doubts, but we'll see. I'd like to be optimistic. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to the undercard?
No, mate. I think I've just given it. I think 12 to 18 months. I think that's pretty fair for a kid that's come out of the Olympics, turned over. If you can give him 3 or 4 years, I think you'll have a body of work to assess him on. I think it's still early days for Torres, and I think Vionello posed a lot of different options for him. He was a lot bigger. He was probably his best opponent. He's coming off his best win of his career, Vionello. So I think I could see why Torres was fighting like the smaller man last night. I could see why he was trying to draw Vionello's lead and come over the top. I could see why he was getting to him in the second half and just slowly turning the lever. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Torres has had the start he's had and why he's fighting the way he's fighting. I think the next 12 to 18 months will be really big for him. I think, and then we'll have something to look at and say, well, he's not going to make it or he is. I think we'll have a better view in the next 12 months.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes for him. And it's, on the undercard, I'll tell you, I wasn't too sure about where either of these guys go. I don't think they're the top of the top at 140. And it was a disputed decision in the fight between Lindolfo Delgado and Elvis Rodriguez. Delgado just slightly edging Rodriguez on the scorecards in a fight where, I don't know, a fair number of the rounds seems like Rodriguez landed the sharper punches, but Delgado was fairly consistently on the front foot. And if there's anything with the scoring from the last couple of days, it does seem like the front foot fighter gets more of the love from the judges as far as that goes. But this is back and forth, a little bit cagey. The beginning rounds were very slow, but it heated up a little bit. It wasn't a fantastic fight by any stretch, but I think the last half was fairly entertaining with two guys who are obviously talented fighters that have a pretty substantial skill set that were just trying to find ways to one-up each other. And yeah, I mean, I guess a little bit of pick your poison on that one. I wasn't too torn about the decision. I checked with AI on this one. The friend told me, you got to try betting with AI. And I didn't trust them because the info they gave me was incomplete. But AI chose Delgado in what was close to a 50-50 fight. Fair play. Chat GPT. To me, you're 1-0. Good for you. But yeah, this was I don't know. Justin, I've seemed like a fair number of people were kind of thought that should have gone Rodriguez's direction and thought pretty substantially where'd you stand on that?
I had Rodriguez winning like close. I mean, it wasn't like 97, 90. I'm like you. I just could never get into the fight. It started out so slow. Neither guy really wanted to open up at all the first 3 or 4 rounds. It was really, I guess, cagey is the word they use. It was, then you're right, it kind of got, then the 9th round was pretty good. But
yeah, the 9th was a pretty damn entertaining round, if I recall. It was
9th round was pretty good because Rodriguez landed a pretty good shot. But I think, like you said, Delgado just got it because if you look at the eye test, judges, everybody, you always, like you say, look for the guy who come forward. Rodriguez just backed up a lot. Yeah, he did land some shots with that style, but I guess Delgado got it just because he was coming forward. But I tried. I was sitting there watching it on mute. I tried to get into it, but it wasn't the most entertaining fight. I didn't really I thought it'd be better than it was.
Yeah, I did too. I thought when I saw it on paper, I'm like, man, that could be a hell of a war.
I thought somebody would get knocked down more. I thought there could be a knockout. I thought each guy would come, like, you're right. I thought it was going to be just because this was their big opportunity to shine. I mean, these guys, this was a big fight for both of them, and especially Rodriguez. He had the loss. He hasn't looked that great in a while. He needed it, and neither guy really, I don't think, laid it all out there as much as I thought they were going to do it. But I'm like you really can't get upset either way it went. I think Delgado did some good things. It was a kind of, I wouldn't say a hard fight to score, but like those first 4 rounds, neither guy was throwing. I think they threw for less than 700 punches combined in a 10-round fight. So neither guy, that was average. Both guys averaged together less than 70 punches a round. That's the kind of fight it was.
Yeah, that's about 12, 15 below like the junior welterweight.
Yeah, it was just neither guy was you just really tentative, nervous to really go after it. And so yeah, I mean, I'll watch them again. I don't think either. I really don't truly believe that either guy is going to be a big time player at 140. I don't see them being a guy that you have to really worry about. Or I think if you're one of the top guys, I think you'll take that fight versus either one.
They're that mandatory that you're like, yeah, okay, we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if I got to fight him, you're not worried about him. Like, okay, because they do have a name. You know, they're not going to be like you're fighting a nobody. That's it's just I don't know. That fight I tried, but eventually I turned it on mute. Kind of just sat there on my phone and just kind of watched it, but I just could never get into it.
Yeah, it was one of those evenings where just nothing seemed to get into a flow where it just like had you just enthralled and entranced with what was going on. But did you have any thoughts on this fight, Des? It was if these guys weren't so far along in their career, it would have been a more interesting fight. This felt like more like an old Friday Night Fights kind of fight or a showbox kind of fight than it did a top rank co-main.
It wasn't a very enjoyable fight. I didn't enjoy it much. It looked to me it was two guys that have probably found their level, and they were both boxing not to lose. I had it 6-4 to Delgado. I think he adapted to the Rodriguez's southpaw stance and kind of slowly turned the screw in the second half. But I wouldn't argue if it was the other way. Delgado's kept his unbeaten record, and he's fighting like he's trying to protect that unbeaten record. And he's not very adventurous. He's not very brave. I think he's leveled off, but it's a PAX division, with the likes of Tszyu, Catchall, Barbosa, Azin, Devon. It's a brilliant division. Hitchens is in there. Matthias is in there. Gary Russell had a brilliant performance last time out.
Yeah, and if you throw in Lindolfo Delgado, which name is not like the other, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I just think that Delgado's got a lot to do to live with that pack. So look, he got away with it last night, very close, but perhaps he's found his ceiling now.
Let me ask you this. If for some reason they scrapped Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero, but 2 months after that there was Lindolfo Delgado against Rolly, who would you take?
That's a fight. Again, two kids of a level. I'm going to say that Delgado might be too polished for Rolly, but Rolly might have a bit too much gumption for Delgado and might jump on him and take him into an uncomfortable spot and make him fight at an uncomfortable pace. That's a really good question, Matty. I'm going to go with Delgado because I always go with a polished fighter over the ragged one, but that's a good fight. I wouldn't know how to pick that one. I'm probably going to go Delgado just because I've got a bit more faith in his style.
Delgado's a little bit cleaner, and I think he does everything better than Rolly does.
He was an Olympian or an amateur standout. I can't remember which one, Justin, but
he does do everything better than Rolly. So it's a good shade. He does do everything better than Rolly. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I think we've already seen with him. He doesn't have the best chin. He doesn't. I just think Delgado would land him with those straight shots, and I think Delgado would probably stop him.
What's funny though, and I'll tell you what, in not to get too far away from the existing conversation, but do you know who Gervonta Davis says is the hardest puncher he's faced? Rolly. And that makes me think that he's not exactly dead against Ryan Garcia in the water, or dead in the water against Ryan, because if there's anything that Ryan Garcia is, it's defensively irresponsible at times. But Ryan said the hardest puncher he's faced in the ring was not Tank. It was Oscar Duarte.
Yeah, a lot of these big fighters though, they just through gritted teeth they give compliments to their rivals. They just can't do it, so they end up giving a compliment to the kid that's absolutely no threat to them. So I think there might be a little bit of that going on. Rolly's no threat to any of them guys at the top at 140. So it's like, yeah, he's the hardest one. He was the biggest puncher. It's a little bit like I can't give my nearest rival any credit or respect at all. I can't lift him, not yet, not while we're still active in the same division. So I'm going to give it to someone that's absolutely no threat to me whatsoever.
And also, you're going to give it to somebody that you beat easily.
Yeah. That's right.
There's a guy you're going to say, oh, no, that was my – yeah. Duarte is one of those heavy hand guys. He's not really like a one-hitter quitter guy. I guess maybe because he does – like I said, he's kind of one of those just thumping guys. I don't know, maybe I still don't believe any of them. Gervonta Davis hit harder than Oscar Duarte. We can leave it at that.
Oh, I was sitting there talking to myself. I was saying that I don't know that Rolly was ever aware that he was knocked out by Gervonta Davis. Like, I don't know if he ever felt getting punched. I just kind of think he was hit and it was over. And everything after that was a blur. Funny, Rolly says the hardest puncher that he ever fought wasn't Gervonta Davis. It was Ismael Barroso. So, anyhow, I
can buy that. I can buy that. Barroso can crack.
Yeah, and some guy. And here's the thing, is that I believe that Davis and Romero both described, in this case, Davis about Romero and Romero about Barroso, that it just felt like they had bricks in their hands. That's how I believe that they both explained the person they were talking about. So it's interesting to say that Davis has said that about Raleigh, because if you remember that fight, I don't really ever remember Raleigh touching Tank with anything very significant. I think he probably threw 90% jabs that were falling short, trying to bait him into stepping. So anyhow, but let's see here. Also on that card, here's a guy you can get into, and he looked a little bit stiff, but nonetheless, still getting a stoppage against Carlos Ornelas. I believe the doctor just pulling the plug between rounds on it. Ornelas 3 times took a knee, knockdowns called, legitimate. But he, for whatever stiffness that Mason was having and the fluidity that he just wasn't feeling that evening, he was still punching like he had bricks in his hands, because he popped Carlos Ornelas with a good one, and he just like, fuck this, taking a knee. And then he would get up and storm back at Mason. It was the most curious thing. But after the 3rd knockdown in between rounds, the doctor found some reason to pull the plug on it. Abdullah Mason picking up another good W there. Again, I think this guy, when you're talking about all the 135 talent, he's definitely one that could play in the division in the coming years and could potentially surprise any of these guys on a given night based on his skill, athleticism, and power. Justin, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, Mason was doing a lot of kind of like letting Ornelas come to him and doing a lot of counter punching, and I think that's why the fight took so long, honestly. If Mason had just put his foot down early, he probably wouldn't have gone a couple rounds. I don't know if he was. I don't know. He was just letting Ornelas come to him.
Didn't he seem like he was throwing wider than usual?
Yeah, he was. It almost, to me, that's the first thing that crossed my mind, was it seemed like they were working on something, like working on some stuff. It had to feel like he was like, you know what, we got a guy that we know is not going to hurt us. We know what he's going to do. He's going to come right at it. He's going to be a heavy bag. And I think they kind of were like working on something, because you're right. It was just a little bit different, and it still worked. But you're right, Ornelas, I think that might be that. It's been a long time since I've seen a guy take like 3 or 4 knees. And like every time he took the right hand, he would it'd be a couple of seconds and he'd be like, oh shit. Let me stop here for a second and let me figure this out. Because that 3rd knee he took, those were 2 really hard shots. I mean, the one got him, and then the second one finished him up, and that's when he had to take a knee. But yeah, he was a tough dude. But Mason's just going to be, I think Mason can showed right there, he can fight off the back foot. I think he can come forward. He's going to be hard versus anybody at 135, because he can kind of do a little bit of everything, and he can bang. So the 135 is definitely one of the best divisions right now, because there's just a lot of guys who can do a lot of different things and all do it well at 135. So we'll see. I'm definitely a fan of Mason. I think he's got to be in a title shot or at something within the next couple of fights. I think it's time. I don't know. I don't really know what else he could keep. You want to keep throwing him out there. I think the next fight definitely needs to be a top 10, 15 guy and get him going. I don't really see the point of him going another 3 or 4 fights versus the Ornelas. Get him maybe he needs a couple of decent top 15 guys, maybe 2 or 3 fights, but I think the Ornelas of the world, that's not going to learn anything. I think it's time to get him out there and let's see what he can really do. And because now with
we lost you there for a second, Justin, and then you're muted. I don't know what happened there.
No, I did that. I don't know why I was sitting there talking. I was sitting there talking. I was writing my talk and looked right at my keyboard and went, "Let me go ahead and mute this real quick." I don't know. It's been a long week, but
it's all good, dude.
It's been I'm zoned out. It's been a very long week. I literally sat there and went, you know what? Let me go ahead and mute. I don't need to quit talking. Oh, whatever. Yeah, I don't know what was going on that one, but let me yeah, I'll just end it with that.
Good. It's all good, man. So, Des, I'll tell you, it's just a shame that Top Rank lets shit marinate too long, and finds all these diverging paths, because if Raymond Murataya finds his way to beat Zura Abdullayev, which I think he will. I need to watch the fight, but I have doubts about a guy who was lost in 4 rounds to Devin Haney. So I kind of feel like Murataya is going to take that. But this potential combination of Keyshawn Davis, Raymond Murataya, and Abdullah Mason, make these freaking fights happen, man. Because I honestly, I have feelings on those fights, but I could see any combination going any different direction. Specifically, Abdullah Mason and Keyshawn Davis. I think that fight is just hot on paper.
Yeah, that's a brilliant fight, and 2 guys in a brilliant division, 135 stacked full of talent, and it's young talent coming through. And there's a couple of senior heads up there in terms of Tank, Shakur, and Loma. They're sitting at the top there, and it could really blend well, this division. But I think with Abdullah, look, he's going along really nicely. 18-0, 16 inside. He's a southpaw. He can do a bit of everything, like Justin said. He can punch. He can box. He's very good at fighting in the pocket. And I wondered last night, I mean, he gets a gauge on the opponent. Ornelas, he understood that Ornelas can't touch him, can't get to him. So maybe he took the choke out a little bit and went for it. But I thought he fell in love with his own power a little bit last night, Mason. And I thought he allowed himself to sit in the pocket a bit too long. And he was really rolling his punches. He was looking for that backhand southpaw left hook. I'm not quite sure if I'd put Abdullah in with a Tank, a Shakur, a Loma. I think the Keyshawn's too soon for both of them. But I'd fancy Keyshawn to beat Roach, as well as Roach did against Tank. I still fancy I fancy Abdullah to beat Roach, as well as Roach did with Tank. And I think perhaps
Mason
a good
and
learning
Davis
fight.
they're both far more proactive in the ring than Davis is, which I think is his lack of activity is probably the only reason that Roach was able to fight him so close.
And I think maybe I'd put Mason in with someone seasoned like Tevin Farmer.
Nice fight.
And yeah, maybe at the end of the year, maybe you'd put him in with someone like a Zepeda.
Yeah, they need to make some of these fights, and I think if you potentially saw Mason against Zepeda, the way that might ultimately manifest is in that Zepeda loses to Stevenson, and it would be Zepeda coming off a loss. Just my initial opinion, thoughts on how the next 12 months might roll around.
But I think there's a lot of potential banana skins at 135 for a lot of kids. Schofield, Keyshawn, Cruz, Roach has just put himself up the top in the top echelons. Maritalia, Zepeda. Yeah, there's a lot of banana skins in that division. It's talent packed. I think Abdullah's top of that list, by the way. But I think you've got to match him carefully for the next 12 months in terms of, let's bring in a Tevin Farmer, let's get in 10 rounds or more. Let's then bring in a Roach. Let's see how he performs against the Roach, and then maybe let it release to someone like a Zepeda at the end of 2025. Or someone like Zepeda, someone who's been occupying that top seat at 135 for a while. I think Abdullah's 2 or 3 fights away now from being one of the front runners of lightweight.
Yeah, man, I think, prior to the Berinchyk performance, I think that I would have said assuredly that there was more upside to Mason than Davis. But the way that Davis rose to the occasion and just manhandled Denis Berinchyk was such a statement that I think that is far more up in the air than it might have been for me 6 months ago, having, watched these fighters as they've developed over the last few years in the ring on these top ranked cards. But it's
Matthew, just
sure.
Just to come in there with the Keyshawns and the Abdullahs and maybe Schofield, Cruz, they're looking for talent, pedigree, and guys that can't punch. So guys like Tevin Farmer, guys like Frank Martin, I think they're going to be really busy. Their phones are going to be ringing because That's that leapfrog for them guys. For the likes of Mason and Keyshawn and Schofield, for them guys to say, look, we're good enough now, but we've got this name on our record and that name on our record. They've got to bring in like a Tevin Farmer or a Frank Martin.
No, I think Tevin Farmer's the perfect name, Des, and I think
Frank Martin's one as well. Frank Martin was
he's
young,
not bad, but
he's fresh.
But when you consider the fact that on the second incarnation of Tevin Farmer, basically as we could have seen it, Raymond Murtaya by no means conclusively beat him. Plenty of people thought that he lost that fight. William Zepeda by no means conclusively beat Tevin Farmer. So, despite, the early in his career having that stoppage, I think for these guys at 135, if they're looking to prove a point in something that's not a title fight, going in and manhandling and stopping Tevin Farmer, that's the scalp. It's one of those things where it's not just the name, it's the method of victory, and that's, I'd be curious to see that specific challenge, because at this point in time, 3 losses in a row on paper be damned. Tevin Farmer, I think, is the right trial horse.
Yeah, someone like that. Someone that's got a good reputation, a good name, and can't punch.
Yeah, and can't punch is kind of a quote unquote with Tevin Farmer, because you can't say he didn't put Zepeda on his ass and that he didn't hurt him in the second fight too. That's the knockouts kind of fool you a little bit on his record. I think Tevin Farmer at 135 is a much sturdier guy, and his punches are seeming to show it too. He always looked frail to me at 130 pounds. He just looked like a cross-eyed runt, and now he looks like a full-grown man. But anyways, so let's see here. Also on that card, we had a little bit of British flair there with Troy Williamson making the trek over and taking on Jahai Tucker, who dropped him twice, one of those being proven by the instant replay. And then later on in the fight, but Williamson found his way to the final bell, got a few touches in on Jahai Tucker. Tucker, an incredibly athletic guy, not the biggest puncher, but he's sneaky, and I think Bradley hinted on it that if he'd be a little bit better at not squaring up, a little bit more stable, work on his fundamentals. The sum of his parts could probably be greater than what we've seen. But at this point in time, just moving along, I don't know. It's Jahai Tucker, to me, Justin, he's a guy with no real identity in the ring, no real clear path forward. He's just kind of stuck in top-rank undercard purgatory.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good learning fight. But you're right. I think he'll eventually get fed to somebody. Like, prospect versus prospect type fight. I think that's his future. I think you summed him up. There's nothing he does that's special. And if he had more pop, he definitely would have got Williamson out. He just doesn't hit hard. He hits hard, but not hard enough. Kind of one of those in-between guys. But you're right. I think it just sets up for him. You're going to see one of their little bit better level prospects versus him, so they can kind of clear some stuff out. And I think that's where his future kind of lies.
I just can't think of anybody who they really have at 160 pounds. Is who's competing where? I think is Troy Isley competing at middleweight? Is that potentially?
Is he? God, he's right there. I think he's below. I don't think he's middleweight. I think he's 154.
Let's take a look there and see what's going on.
Hey, if you go by the Janibek's opponent, might as well give him the shot for the title then. I mean, he can't be worse than that guy. We'll get to that eventually, but he can't be worse than that guy. Hey, he's probably earned a title shot now. He can't be worse than the dude they just put in there. So, yeah, who knows? But
no, so Isley is competing in the middleweight division, at least according to Box Rec. So, yeah.
Isley should fight Tucker next.
Yeah, kind of fucking around, Bob.
Yeah, let's see who's going to go. I think Isley will win. And then you can kind of move Tucker, can kind of go his own way and probably end up on Pro Box.
Yeah, honestly, I'd have to tell you that if you look at his record there, the between the two, I think that that Isley's win over Vladimir Hernandez is probably the best win on the CV of either guy. So, Des, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, no, we know what we're going to get from Troy at this stage. He's one paced, he's mid intense type power. He does everything in straight lines. He's not one to feint or to step off or use angles. So he made it a little bit easy. He made it easy for Tucker last night. I think he was up at the wrong weight as well. The best Troy we've seen is down at 54. So Troy was brought over to give Tucker a win or to have a look at Tucker to make sure he can get past someone like Troy. I'm agreeing with Justin. I think they'll feed Tucker to somebody. I don't see a very high ceiling with Tucker, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you. So hopefully, as I said there, it would be very nice to see them just go ahead, put their prospects in there, Jahai Tucker, Troy Isley, make that fight. And let's see here. Also on that undercard, Albert Gonzalez with the what to me was a very close fight on against Dana Coolwell, but the judges disagree. I think one of them didn't even give Coolwell a single round. Which is absolutely ridiculous. Coolwell is proven to be a good operator at featherweight. He gave a lot of work to Gonzalez, who I think is definitely a capable fighter, but I don't see him having a whole lot of future. I mean, featherweight's a stacked division, and when you look at the talent around him, he's maybe get a title shot one day, maybe just get to eliminator level. But ultimately, Gonzalez, to me, he's not the best top-ranked prospect by any shakes. But this was actually a pretty damn entertaining fight for anybody who didn't get to see it. I think it was probably worth your time. Albert Gonzalez, Dana Coolwell, Steven Navarro taking out Juan Esteban Garcia. In the fourth round, Navarro, going in against a guy who's 14-1-2. That might be a little bit quick by Bob's standards. So now he's 6-0, Steven Navarro. Be interesting to see where he goes from there. And Art Barrera Jr., another good prospect on there, taking out Deljan Gonzalez in the second round. Deljan, he's been stopped 3 times, but he's kind of one of those. I think he's kind of like a Midwesty club fighter kind of guy at the end of the day. So I wouldn't read a whole lot into that one. Any thoughts on these undercard fights before we move on to the next card, guys?
No, nothing from me, mate.
All right. And let's see here. So next up we'll start off with the card from the UK, in which in a heavyweight fight, Joyce and Filip Hrgovic went all 10 rounds. Both guys getting some licks in, but it was not a defensive performance necessarily on either side. Joyce starting to look all of his 39 years, but absolutely giving the best of rips in there, never quitting, never giving up at any point in time in there. But Hrgovic just being a little bit, I guess you would just say his fundamentals are better, a little bit more reactive at the end of the day. His punch is just a little bit straighter, but a little rough go for Joyce there. But at 39 years old, he's given a lot in these last few years. It's not been an easy run.
No, we've seen Joyce fall off a cliff professionally, and it was called by a lot of the guys on this panel without being disrespectful. We've never been disrespectful to Joe. It's not what we do here. But we was concerned by his style and his approach, and we flagged it early. And on this pod, we've all come on and we all spoke about the way he fights with his face. And something I've always said, if that's what we're seeing on fight night, what's going on in camp? So Joe's always been celebrated for being this tough guy, and he's always been celebrated for walking through people's punches and sort of this marauding style and getting to people with his own power and his own bulk and size. And that just caught up with Joe, and that's all that is. And we saw the Zhilei Zhang thing, and Zhilei Zhang absolutely clipped Joyce, and they've done a cardinal mistake. They never read Joe. They put him straight back in with him. because everyone had so much faith in Joyce. They had so much faith in that style. They had so much faith in this juggernaut and his toughness. And Zhang clipped him again. And that kind of took the soul of Joyce. And he's not the first fighter to have that happen to him. And on this pod, after the Cash Alley fight, I think it was me, Andy, Rob, we concluded that I don't think we're ever going to see Joyce win a fight again, because if you're struggling to get past Cash Alley, this is a kid that's a part-time boxer who's never fought for an area belt or never won an area belt. How are you going to beat any of the guys in this division, the top end of this division? And he since then he's been beaten by 2025's version of Derek Chisora, and he got beaten in a fight last night with Hrgovic, who's in the same sort of boat Joe's in, which is loser goes home. Last night wasn't a nice fight to watch for me. I didn't enjoy it because I could see two fighters that had very limited motor skills, and they were just trading off. I'm going to try not to get hit, and while I'm trying not to get hit, I'm going to try and land. And there was no defense. There was no science. It wasn't particularly skillful or pretty. Nothing majestic about it. You know, it was two big guys that were throwing shots. And I thought Hrgovic won the fight well. And I really hope I don't see Joyce in a boxing ring again. I said this after the Cash Alley fight, but I really want to emphasize it. We don't want to see Joyce in a pro boxing ring again. And that's not because Joyce is a failure. It's not because Joyce is a loser. Nothing like that at all. Joyce was a standout amateur. He got a silver medal at the Olympics. It should have been a gold, beating a standout amateur kid in Tony Yoka. He's been a British champion, a Commonwealth champion, a European champion. He's got stoppage wins over Joseph Parker and a stoppage win over Daniel Dubois. He's got absolutely nothing to reproach himself about. He's had a very good boxing career, amateur and pro, but time to call it a day now.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And I kind of wonder, Justin, when it might have happened. And I don't know if it was just the guy, you know, kind of got old. I mean, it happens. He's 39 now. He's a big dude, you know, like, larger people oftentimes have a shorter shelf life in a lot of ways. Or if it was, the first fight, he got touched, and I think it was stopped by the swelling on his face against Zhang. And then in the second fight, he just got clobbered. And you wonder if a guy got old or if it was just one shot too many in the wrong fight and something changed. Because if you look, like, even as a big guy, the fluidity that he had of his shots, through the Parker fight, for a guy that was that big and maybe not fast, there was still a good deal of, fluidity to his work. And it's just evaporated, right? Like it's totally like a reaction and motor skills thing.
I think it's accumulation. Joyce has been taking these shots since his first fight and then his last fight. And I'm sorry, I think Diz, when we talked about it, everybody kept thinking, this guy's got the chin of a god. Well, he had a really good chin, but trust me, every great chin eventually starts to crack. And he can't take these shots at heavyweight that he was taking. Yeah, he looked fluid versus Parker, but Parker was landing bombs, absolute bombs on Joyce. And I think we were all just kind of caught up in the amazement of, man, this guy, like, maybe he can't be hurt. But deep down inside, I think we all knew he was going to get hurt. You're not going to do that. He's getting older. Joyce is 39 years old. Look at me. I just turned 40. I think you're in your late 30s.
I just turned 42, dude.
Yeah.
Feel every fucking day of that stupid
Trust
shit.
me, we're older than him. We're not taking – he's had a long run. I mean, the training, everything you've gone through, your body is not going to take those kind of shots forever. And last night, I'm like this. It was entertaining. Parts of it was, and parts of it, you were sitting there watching the fight like, come on. Somebody pull Joyce. Joyce take a knee. Maybe because he just was – you could tell Hrgovic wasn't like Zhang. Hrgovic has shown now that he has pop, but he doesn't have big-time power. Because Dubois, he landed 1,000 shots to the face and didn't hurt Dubois. Joyce last night was there. Joyce was there to be hurt and completely annihilated. he didn't do anything different. He just led with his face. He has the head movement of a tree. He doesn't do anything differently. Last night, Joyce didn't even hardly throw a ton of shots. He just come in with his face. And I will give Hrgovic this, though. For all the hell we give him, he did throw some pretty nice combinations. He was kind of fluid at times a little bit. And he was throwing some good combinations. And Joyce, there was one time in the fight that I couldn't help. I would laugh, but Hrgovic kind of backed up into the corner and was just like, he would just kind of stood there with his right hand up. Joyce was kind of just like coming at him, throwing the shots were so slow that Hrgovic had time, like a minute. Okay, well, he's going to throw this. I can see that coming. Let me lean this way. And then pop, pop, pop with his right hand and move to the other corner. Joyce I felt bad last night watching it because it pissed me off that everybody that trained Joyce last night, everybody that made money off of him can go straight to hell. You knew what you were getting when you brought him in that gym for this fight. The man doesn't have it. He should not be in there anymore. He cannot stop a punch at all. So you got to imagine in sparring, he was still taking these shots. You can tell that Joyce was never fast. He never had this ability to do all this stuff. And so
he had
now
good timing at one time, right? Like that was it.
He had
good.
He did have timing, but that's been punched out of him 4 or 5 fights ago.
Yeah, so he's not the same guy who just kept finding the jab on Dubois and obliterated his overbone.
They should not be asking a 39-year-old man who has given the sport all he's got. You should not be asking him to ramp it up again and go in there versus another huge heavyweight and take just horrific shots. I do believe the game plan last night was the Dubois game plan. We're going to let Hrgovic blow out. And when he did not blow a lung, and one reason he didn't is because Joyce just didn't land enough. Yes, Hrgovic threw a lot of shots, but Joyce also needed to land a lot of shots. And he didn't land a ton on Hrgovic, like really big-time shots on Hrgovic. And so Hrgovic was able to last a little bit longer. And I'm surprised that Hrgovic actually had a little energy in his legs. So the game plan completely failed. They were just going to hope that I'm Joyce. I'm going to go back. You know what the game plan is going to be? We're going to go back to when you were fighting 10 fights ago. You're just going to Homer Simpson him, take all these shots. By the 4th or 5th round, he's going to be passed out. Then you're just going to lean on him, and he's going to take a knee and quit, and you got him. But when Hrgovic started throwing back, and there was no other game plan to go to. That was it. That was their plan. They were hoping that Hrgovic passed out. And when the man hung on, the game plan's out the window, and you've got nothing left to go to. I just feel bad. I hope for his sake they don't drag Joyce out again. He's got nothing. He's got nowhere to go. All you can do is try to put him in a domestic fight. Try to put him versus somebody a lower level. There's nowhere for him to go. He's not going to beat anybody good anymore.
Yeah, there's no point. There's no point.
You're going to get him hurt. You're going to get him hurt.
No point. Even if he beats Nick Webb, even if he beats Dave Allen, what does it tell us? And Joe would have to drop significant money to take them fights. He's had a really privileged career, Justin. He's been paid really well. He's been on TV. He's had networks backing him. He's won loads of domestic titles, good titles. He's beaten some terrific guys. He's beaten Joe Joyce, Daniel Dubois, both are world champions. But sometimes, mate, the game is up. And in boxing, it's not the game to stick around if you're not getting it right. Thank you, Joe Joyce, for everything you've done. We've all enjoyed your fights. There's no disrespect on the asylum, but enough's enough now. Time to call it a day. I don't want to see him in domestic fights. I don't want to see him having a comeback fight. I don't want to see him fighting guys like Moses Atoma and getting flogged. I just want to see Joe Joyce say, I'm a bright enough guy. I've got a degree in something. I'm going to now open a door with a few quid in the pocket, in my bank, a few quid in my pocket to go and do what I really enjoy and I'm passionate about. You've had a really good boxing career. Close the door on it now.
Hey, let me play a little bit of alternate like a revisionist history with you here. Maybe we'll call it. Say that, call it like 12, 13 years ago in his amateur career, give or take, then that Joe Joyce said, you know what? I'm going to forgo this. I'm not going to try to go this Olympic route, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go into the pro game. What do you think Joe Joyce's pro career would have been like with 3 or 4 more years in the pro game, you know, when he was in his late 20s, rather than getting in, you know, past his 30th?
Look, I mean, it's a good question because just sitting here, I'm thinking about the elite big men that we've seen come into the pros, and for whatever reason, not being able to mirror their amateur success into the pro success. But then the argument could be that people like Audley Harrison, David Price, Joe Joyce, Fraser Clark, Philip Hrgovic, Tony Yoka, these guys overachieved in the amateurs because they could. I remember when Audley won his gold in Sydney, he was twice the size of some of the guys he was boxing. He had a brilliant style over 4.2s. You can get a medal doing that. But when you go into the realms of professional boxing and everything changes, you're now doing 8 threes, 10 threes, 12 threes. The gloves are different. Your hands are like plaster of Paris. Some of these guys, they'll take 2 or 3 shots to give you one of theirs. There's no standing counts. There's no referees stopping fights because of nosebleeds. It highlights the difference in the amateurs and the pros. To kind of pinpoint the question you asked me, would Joe Joyce been better served taking 4 or 5 years off of his amateur career and putting that into the pros? No, I don't think we're a different Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce marauded his way through the amateurs. He was big, he was tough, he was rugged, he was a juggernaut. But people still found him out in the amateurs. Usyk found him out in the amateurs. So I just think that Joe, I think Justin said it, you know, there comes a time when a good chin gets cracked. Look, Mike Tyson was never, ever the same after Buster Douglas did what he did. David Price was never the same after Tony Thompson. And before that, I can't remember a heavyweight boxer looking so good on the come up. Vladimir had the sense to jump in with Manny and completely change his style. I think it was after the Ross Purity fight. You know, sometimes, yeah, boxers either like, I've got nowhere to go, the game's up, or I need to develop a style that gets me through the next phase of my career. And in Joe's case, it's been a multitude. His style, his motor skills, the guys he's fought on the come up, he's had a very quick, sharp career. He's taken loads of punches. He got a double knockout against a huge guy in Zillian who can crack. And I just think that empties you. You know, it's not just in boxing. We see it in tennis. We see it in football. We see it in rugby. Sometimes you get emptied and you're just not the same guy you was 18 months ago. And I'm just, you know, we spoke about this last week briefly on the pod. Fighters earning a few bob, having, you know, a little bit of wiggle room, financial security, so they can go and do other things they like. Joe Joyce is not a silly guy. He's a clever guy. He's an artistic kid. He's got a creative flair. I really hope he goes and has a wonderful life now, built on the back of a really good boxing career, amateur and pro. We don't want to see him in the ring again.
Well, Des is right. Think about this, and this I'll answer your question really quickly.
Yeah.
Look at Joyce's skill level when he had all that amateur experience. Could you imagine him coming in raw? He wouldn't have lasted at all coming in with the because he learned nothing in all the. Look at all the setups he was at the GB camps, all the top level trainers he got, and he's still. You can't teach. He didn't have. He's never going to have anything different than he has now. I think his career just would have been shorter. I think he would have come into. He would have his first fight as a pro would have been the same fight he had last night.
You know, maybe it's the opposite of what I suggested, and maybe he should have tried to be a 2-time medalist. I mean, that's
the better route. That's the better route. That's the better route. I've got to tell you, that's the route so many kids don't take. Do you know what? I've won a gold.
Unless they're forced, like in Cuba.
Yeah, but I've spoken to trainers at GB and they've advised kids, look, you know, the money you're going to earn in the pros, all right, it's a bit more than what you go earn here, but there's so many pitfalls in the pros. We can guarantee you a 4 or 5 year deal. We can guarantee you a pathway to every qualifying event. So you get to the Worlds, you get to the Europeans, you get to the Olympics. Like, you know how the Olympic system works now. You've been through one cycle. Go and do it again. Be a double gold medalist. See what that offers. And that is a route amateurs in this country don't take. And it's a good route.
So let me ask you this question on the side though, Des. Do you think, and when you consider the lengths boxing had to go to just to get back into the Olympics in 2028, do you think that it is suffering on the wrong end of so many god-awful decisions is something that also influences these kids to go to the pro game?
No, because you get really bad. We've seen loads of balls ups in the pros recently. Couple last night. Referees who don't know their ass from their elbow. Promoters who can't lie straight in bed. Networks who don't know whether they're coming or going. If you look, the amateurs is like this spaghetti bolognese of an amateur sport, but the pros is just the same. I think the problem we have, it's not a problem. The dilemma these kids have is simple. You've got a network saying, we really want you. You're a household name because of what you've done in the Olympics. Here's the check we're going to write you. We're going to guarantee you this many fights. You're going to have it all on your own terms. And you're going to be a pro boxer for the next 3 or 4 years, having it all your own way. I'm not quite sure that works. We've had this conversation. Fraser Clark appointing, it's a case in point. Got kids like Fraser who are fighting 3 times in a 4-day tournament and they're fighting 4 times in 12 months. That's not good. So why is that being allowed to happen? Fraser Clark is now fighting guys that haven't won or have won 6 in sort of 24 bouts. When did he ever fight that? I mean, he wasn't fighting that when he was a novice amateur. So why is he now fighting it as a highly paid pro? There's loads of mistakes the pros make with these top amateurs. And these amateurs kind of just fall into it because they're being well paid and they've never had it so easy. But we've certainly got to try and work out, how do we transition a top amateur into the pros? Now, I always look back at the Andre Ward case because I remember Andre in Greece in 2004. He wasn't the standout American. He went in at 81 kilos and he got gold, and he wasn't the standout American on that squad. But they took Andre away from TV and they worked on him behind the scenes, and he was constantly active. And he had a couple of scares, and I think he had the Darnell Boone experience. But by the time we got him, and I think it was that Super 6 tournament, wasn't it? That where Frock and Kessler and all them guys were in it. Andre Ward was the least expected guy to do anything in that tournament. But they've got him ready behind the scenes. The transition had been made. They knew what they was doing. And I think we need more of that from our elite amateurs. You don't have to walk into these big TV deals where you're you're sort of, co-main eventing 5 times a year on Sky or DAZN or BT or Top. There should be a situation where, no, you're going to get out 12 times this year. We're going to keep you boxing once a month, but only 3 of them are going to be on TV. And then the next year, we're going to get 5 of them on TV, but the other 6 or 7 are going to be off TV. And then after 2 years, we expect you to be somewhere in the region of 22 to 26 bouts in, and you should be there by then. And I think that's how you should kind of transition a top amateur into the pros. But we do it in reverse. We stagnate them. We say, look, you're going to fight 4 or 5 times this year, and then a kid gets injured, he pulls a muscle. Now it's 3 times a year, but we'll make it up next year. And before you know it, 2 or 3 years has passed, and you have this Fraser Clark situation. You're getting clipped by a kid that never boxed amateur and was the white collar champion in Ipswich. So we're not getting it right because there's too many elite amateur big men that are not transitioning well into the pros. So the genesis of this conversation was a good question. Would Joe Joyce have been better served? And can we do anything better to serve these big fellas? No, I don't think he'd have been better served if he'd have jumped ship earlier into the pros. I think the money he was offered was probably life-changing, and I understand why he took it. But I think these guys, not necessarily Joe Joyce, because he was moved fast, but I think a lot of these guys are being moved slowly. And it's complete opposite of what they've been doing for the last 3 years as an elite amateur, part of an elite sports program.
There you go. And to keep it on the realm of heavyweights and what was kind of a bizarre fight here, and I hate to shift gears so quickly, but David Adelaide getting a stoppage in the 6th round over Jamie TKV. You guys want to call him that? Go ahead. Vowels are a waste of money and Wheel of Fortune. What am I supposed to tell you? But it was a very odd occurrence when the referee stepped in, said break, grabbed TKV's arm. Adelaide landed a punch, knocking down TKV, who got up and then got knocked down again, at which point the fight was called. I think when you say break and you touch the fighter, you're breaking the fighter, and the only thing that should happen when somebody is caught with a punch there, at the very least, they should be given 5 minutes, and potentially, the fight should be called if they can't continue because they're not in the right position. But Des, the referee, went neither of these directions, and I hate to be someone who takes this the route on things, but it might have been because he thought that Adelaide was down on the cards, and that would have been a quick route for Jamie to get out of the fight with a W. And he inserted himself in more ways than one. What are your thoughts? It was pretty odd.
The referee's incompetent. He doesn't know how to handle a boxing match. He doesn't know how to stand between two big fellas. What's all this break, pulling someone's hand away? Like, I've never seen it before. It doesn't exist in a pro boxing ring. If you want two kids to stop boxing, you're very clear, you're very direct. It's stop boxing. That's it. What's all this break, pulling someone's hand away crap? And David Adelaide didn't do anything wrong, because you could argue David Adelaide didn't that call. David Adelaide didn't know that TKV's arm was being held. Jamie TKV's had break, or he hasn't, but he's felt the referee pull his arm away, and he's gone into limp mode, and he's been caught with a left hook on the inside. I don't know what that referee was playing at. Referees shouldn't be touching kids. They shouldn't be pulling people's arms away. A fighter should not.
Oh, Des, we lost you there for a second. I don't know what happened. Oh, still lost you. Connection. Go ahead and you're still breaking up pretty bad there.
Saying that it's scandal.
You broke up really
bad.
bad.
To happen. The fight was warming up. Adelaide was finding his range.
You broke up really bad for like 20 seconds there. So rewind on what you said there. It was all sorts of digital hell.
Sorry, mate. We had a nightmare, didn't we?
You're fine.
I don't know. I was ranting about the incompetence in this referee and not knowing whether his arsehole was fried or boiled. He shouldn't be touching a boxer's hands. He shouldn't be pulling arms away. He shouldn't be, just sort of touching people and allowing kids to continue boxing. You've got to be very assertive when you're in there. You've got to be very direct. You've got to be this small man that can impose himself on two big men. And he wasn't that guy. And I'm not saying that the fight changed. I'm not saying that David Adelaide won because of this referee's stupidity. But it didn't have to happen. The fight was warming up. Adelaide was finding his range. Jamie TKV was showing more energy in the middle rounds of the fight than I've ever seen him show. It was warming up nicely. And it didn't have to happen like that. I can't really sort of say any more about the fight because there wasn't a lot to it to that point. But in short, referees should not be pulling kids' arms around while they're in a clinch and kids are still thrown on the inside. It was incompetence. And it's not going to go to a no contest. I thought it was initially, but it's just a side of pro boxing that we don't need to see. It's too much of a grey area. Bad refereeing.
You'd at least hope that maybe they would find their way to a rematch at the very least if there's no overturning of that into a no contest, because it's a shame when the referee inserts themselves into this manner into fights, and it's no different when judges get the wrong call on the cards either. It ruins the night for the fans. It ruins the effort and the work of the fighters involved, and in this case, it's not like there was a decided conclusion in sight either. I felt like the fight was entirely up in the air at the time of the clinch, I guess you would say. I don't know. Justin,
it wasn't a look. it's really unfair because David Adelaide's done nothing wrong. He's just thrown a really good hook on the inside. But when that referee pulled TKV's arm out of the hold, it's just so natural for Jamie to think, well, that's a natural break in the fight. And he's half gone limp. He's switched off. Now, you could say, well, protect yourself at all times. Well, I get that. If you're in a corner and you've dropped your hands because you've heard the bell or, but if a referee's putting his hands on you and pulling your arm away, I think that's a real misleading instruction. And the referee he's overstepped the mark. And it's not the first time we've seen referees in British rings show a level of incompetency that's cost a fighter.
Yeah, and I mean, to Dez's point that this isn't Adelaide's fault, I mean, he didn't know that the ref had grabbed TKV's arm, Justin. He didn't have any clue of that. He just kept working. But as far as his opposition went, as soon as the referee inserts themselves into the clinch and has said the word break, then that protect yourself at all times. You're kind of going into the mode of trying to separate at that point in time, not in the mode of put my glove up and make sure the hook doesn't catch me on the side of my dome.
But before Justin comes in, sorry, mate, but we saw this with the Rafferty fight and the O'Regan fight. Yeah. Referees shouldn't be pulling arms down. They shouldn't be patting gloves. It's very clear. Stop boxing. Box. That's it. You don't have to be touching boxers' arms or pulling their gloves around.
Mayweather Ortiz. Same type thing happened. I mean, if you look at the replay, you can see the TKV guy kind of looked at the ref. Then he got hit in the face. Because the ref was like this, the ref was in there, and so he was looking at the ref because he was grabbing him, and then got hit in the face. So, yeah, that was just – if they're not going to no contest, which they probably – like I think Des said they won't, I would imagine they'd probably rematch it because where are these guys really – I mean, there's not like people are going to be clamoring to fight either one of these guys. So I think if you just want to settle it, and then that'll actually build the next fight because you'll have more beef, more shit to talk. So I imagine they'll probably just throw them in there again versus each other because, like I said, you could see him looking. He kind of gave him a look and then got hit in the head. I think Adelaide was going to. So,
Justin, Barry Smith jumped on a referee and pulled him straight away, and he said words to the effect, "You called break and you pulled my fighter's arm away. So why have you allowed the other kid to hit him with a left hook?"
That's a fair question.
Why are you calling break, pulling the kid's arm away, then letting the other kid hit him with a left hook? Why are you touching kids' arms? Why are you pulling arms down? It makes you vulnerable. You switch off, you go limp. Or worse way, as your arm comes down, you're giving the other kid room to spin inside. Since when did referees start doing this type of shit?
It's getting worse and worse. And I have to tell you, when you look and Michael Thompson made a good point in there, and he said the referee judged the Joyce fight, next up. And I got to tell you, I think that it's time that some boxing fans find their way to getting involved in officiating, and because they obviously need new people. They need more competent people. So I don't know what the steps are, but I think some people need to take those steps because this is clearly a very, very narrow industry, which badly needs some new blood. In my opinion, I can't even remember the damn ref's name. Probably seen him before. Who gives a shit? Same crap, different day. This is the sport of boxing. And at some point in time during the afternoon, I took a nap and I missed the fight between undefeateds, Jack Rafferty and Corey O'Regan. Apparently O'Regan was doing a fair job boxing until the third when he got cracked in the face with the right hand and went down. And he made it a couple of more in the corner, tossing the towel after he was getting smacked about the ring. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin? I mean, I was going through O'Regan's record, and it was a very padded record to find his way to 14-0 and into this fight. And he had done most of his work at lower weight classes. It just seems like a case of a guy finding a dude with a shiny record, to get by on until something more meaningful goes. It looks good on the resume, but when you dig through it, this victory, I can't say that it's very. I rate it too high, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, O'Regan was probably winning the first couple of rounds. Maybe just because he was moving well, and then got caught. I mean, I don't think it was a dirty shot. It was another one of those. The ref was kind of in there, and you got to keep your hands up. That is like the first thing they say, keep your hands up at all times, and he didn't, and he got caught. I think some people were saying maybe the second shot was late. I didn't really see that one. But, yeah, I mean, it's just like you have to keep your hands up. It wasn't a cheap shot. It wasn't a sucker punch. You're in the ring. If the ref doesn't stop it, you better get your hand up. And there's nothing, you can't get mad at the other guy if he lays you out. And I'd say this, O'Regan is tough. Yeah, I know you're talking about his record, but man, he went a couple more rounds, and I definitely thought he probably should have, or that he was going to be able to go. And that definitely it's not going to help his future career because he took some really bad. I'm glad the corner wasn't trying to be too brave, because if they hadn't have thrown that towel in, he definitely would have kept going until they laid him completely out. I think he was in there until he couldn't move. And so I'm glad they jumped in because he would have kept going. I think he was going to be in there until he physically could not get up. So I'm glad they jumped in and wasn't trying to just let him, because he didn't have the kind of power. He wasn't going to change anything. And he was so hurt, I don't think he even knew where he was. So I'm glad that we finally had a corner that decided, you know what, we're going to get involved in this because the guy's he's going to hurt himself. So I'm glad they looked out for him and did what they're actually supposed to do, because that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen that much. So, yeah, he said, I don't know where Rafferty goes. I like his little dreadlocks he's got going on. But, yeah, but I always think guys look stupid when they do that. But, yeah, O'Regan, you got to give him – Regan will get another fight because of this, just because he was doing pretty good and he is so tough. So he'll be back in there again. He'll get another shot at somebody. And
hopefully at a lower weight, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm glad it didn't go longer than it could have. It really could have, because the referee wasn't going to jump in. He was just standing there. He wasn't going to stop him. And the corner had to throw the towel all the way across the ring and hit him, because the referee was not going to jump in and stop it. So I'm glad they – I mean, that was the best part of it. The referee was not going to – he was going to let him keep going. He was just going to let it go. And maybe it depends on – we don't know what we would do if we were a referee, but I know back in the day, and I don't know if they still do this or not, but a lot of referees would kind of do their research on the guys in the ring. They would kind of look and see, do they have the power? Have they turned fights around? Kind of what is their MO? Are they a guy that starts slow and they can take a lot of shots, and they kind of, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt? I don't know if referees do their homework like that anymore, because I know back in the day they did. They would actually watch film. They would know what was coming, so they wouldn't make a mistake and wouldn't maybe stop a guy earlier than they should have, because, that's what he does. So I don't know if they still do that anymore, and I don't think the guy last night was doing that kind of research. I think it's something you should kind of do a little bit. Maybe you shouldn't go completely by that, but I think you should kind of know what you've got when you get in there, because you'll see fights where a guy has one knockout in 21 fights and he's just getting completely destroyed, and you're like, well, he's not going to turn it around. He doesn't knock anybody out. So if you're a referee, you got to think to yourself, am I going to let him just keep taking these horrific shots to the face, knowing that I'm not taking away his opportunity to win and stealing a moment from him, because he doesn't have that moment?
Well, to be fair, that's the tough thing, when you've padded a record, is you don't necessarily you're kind of robbing people of having that knowledge. Like, yeah, he only has three knockouts or whatever it was, but yeah, he hasn't fought, over 6 rounds that many times, kind of stuff like that, right? So you're thinking, maybe he could do it later, something like that. And that's the problem. If you take these 2 massive step ups, there's nothing to go off of if you're trying to necessarily go with the method of guarding the fighter. But yeah, I don't know. It's what does the future hold for Jack Rafferty? He seems to be one of many fighters of reasonable quality at 140 pounds, and much kind of like I was talking about how I'd like to see, so-and-so fight each other at 135. There's plenty of 140 domestic fights that I think are well worth getting done.
Yeah, look, 140 is really stacked. It's becoming one of the premier divisions in boxing. You've got one talent after another. Where does Jack Rafferty go? I think Jack should just sit tight and get in lane behind Dalton Smith, Adam Azim, and Jack Catterall. Let them guys get up the front for now. And in the words of Terry Lawless, when he was talking about Jim McDonnell fighting Barry McGuigan, let Barry move on, let him do all what he does, and then we'll catch him when he's coming down. And I think that's where Jack Rafferty's got to be for the minute. He's not quite where Adam Azim or Dalton Smith are, or Jack Catterall. But he can learn a lot just coming behind them, and he can pick up the scene they create. I thought last night was another bad performance from a referee. I think he was another one that put his hands on the fighter, pulled O'Regan's arm down, which gave Rafferty the room to throw a right hook over the top. I didn't like the way the referee kept the fighter in there. Justin's right. He was never going to pull him out. And perhaps the corner kept him in for one round a bit too long. And we've had this conversation, and I know I've spoken to Dominic about this. We don't seem to have trainers anymore that are governors. We don't seem to have trainers that call the shots. And maybe it's because we've got promoters now have never been so involved, and networks and people that anchor these network press conferences. And I don't know, you've got managers coming into this, and a trainer now could be in a gym with a nutritionist and an S&C guy, and maybe the trainer's voice just isn't as loud as it used to be. But years ago, a trainer would have said to O'Regan, look, we're jumping up a weight. We've never been near this type of kid. I don't expect us to have an easy night. If it gets really tough in there, let's pull it before you get knocked out or really hurt. The trainers might not say that to the fighter, but he'll say it to his second, and they're on guard. Now, in that round where Reagan got dropped heavy and he was just saved by the bell and he struggled to get back to his corner, at that point, the trainer looks into his fighter's eyes and says, I'm going to give you one more round. Show me something. O'Regan survived that round, but you knew he was going to get beat. And at that point, I think the trainer could have said to him, you've survived, you've got off the floor, you've proven you can compete, but you're not going to win this one tonight. All you're going to do is get stopped or knocked out. And that's when, perhaps in the old days, when a fighter took a fight like that, a trainer would have said, I'm going to pull you out now. I'm going to save you for another night. Now, when I say that, there'd be a lot of people that go, oh, but you can't do that. He's fighting for a title. He's on TV. Yeah, I get all that. It's never been no different. Fighters have always fought for titles. They've always been on TV. They've always sold tickets. They've always done it in front of their loved ones, their friends, their families. But trainers used to have this real big thing about looking after kids, saving them for another night. High-profile trainers with very high-profile fighters in the best of fights used to say, after 3 or 4 rounds, let's call it a day on this one, and let's revisit this in 18 months' time. Let's save you for another night. And I think maybe the corner could have done that to Corey just a round earlier than what they did. But that's just me. I'm a little bit old school, a little bit older than what a lot of boxing fans are now. But that's what I would have done with him last night.
Yeah, a lot of times, the fighters' eyes, they think like there is no tomorrow. That's just part of being young.
Actually, not to interrupt you, but that happened. Or no, we ain't got to the fight yet. But what Des said, that 100% happened in the Tszyu Spencer fight. They stopped that exactly when they stopped him maybe even earlier than they could have. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, they knew.
Well, it's Justin, just to pick up on that, right?
They knew what was
grown up. That's grown ups who really know
they knew what was going to happen, and they said
having honest conversations with each other, saying, if this gets too deep, if he's going to get really hurt, we've got another 3 or 4 years where we can really do something in this.
That's what happened. 100%.
That's right. That's exactly right.
They knew he was taking the shots. They knew he wasn't feeling it. They knew it wasn't going to happen, and they did that. They pulled him exactly when they should have. There was no point of going on. There wasn't no. You don't always have to be a soldier. You don't always have to be, macho and take the shot. Sometimes you got to realize, hey, guys beat my ass. I'm not going to beat him tonight. Let's just move on.
Well, and you'd have to think ultimately that
Correct.
Joey Spencer was paid handsomely for going over to Oz and taking that fight, and and I think he's clearly known what his level was. He got the right call. He accepted it. He not going to make that kind of money for a fight ever again, and he can go and do something entirely different because the boxing he's hit his ceiling. I didn't even watch the fight. I kind of thought it was totally predictable what was going to go on there. But yeah, anyhow, we touch, and that's kind of works for me to touch on that as far as an issue of time. Hey, way to segue and get that one in real quick. I think that was effective. Let's see here. The back over to the card that was from Manchester. A fight. I wish I had been able to pay more attention to this one. Which was I going to go to? Justin on this, because it was looking, it sounded like a really good fight, but I was watching the card from Kazakhstan at the same time. So what did I miss with this Khalil Majid win over Alex Murphy? It sure sounded like a freaking banging fight from what I could hear out of my left ear as I was trying to watch two screens at once.
Well, like I was telling you the other day, I've got the stick, so we can watch on my TV. I can watch like 4 boxes, so I can watch all 4 fights at the same time. So I had that one. I had the Kazakhstan. I had Matlock in one corner, the old Andy Griffith show, and I had some kind of rugby in the corner. So I was able to watch both fights. And while Matlock, I could hear Matlock, and then I could kind of watch the. I don't know if y'all know Matlock or not, but I watch old random shit.
Okay.
But we were it was a good fight. Majid, I think that was his name, right? Majid, he landed a ton of right hands, and Murphy's tough because he took, there was one round where I think he might have landed like 7 or 8 in a row right hands. And Murphy's only problem is that he's got some ability. He's tough, but the man cannot break an egg. And he really couldn't deter Majid that much. And I think that's probably why I think he's 13 and he was 13-0 with no knockouts. And I think that was a problem in the fight. The fight was close.
So it kind of sounds like like a little bit different than the O'Regan fight in that he was a super light puncher, but he was going in with a guy who was a heavy puncher, but not heavy enough to stop him. So he had to take 10 rounds of getting clocked.
So Murphy's going to be one of these guys that's going to have a hard career because I think he's always going to be in fights like that where he's probably going to hang tough. He's going to take a lot of punishment. He can't stop the guy. So he's always going to be going the distance. And he's going to I think he'll be an exciting fight, but he's going to have it's not going to be an easy route for him because I think all his fights are going to be like last night. As he goes up the level, I think all his fights will be like that fight where he's going to have to take a lot and just gut through and use his skill. And they're always going to be hard. If you really can't deter a guy that much, you're always going to have a hard career. It's never going to be easy.
It's like McKinson, who I was really high on, and I thought that, Virgil Ortiz stopping him mattered because, he might have been a light puncher, but he was a very, very clever fighter. You just knew that eventually his lack of firepower was going to catch up with him, and it was just happened to be against Virgil Ortiz, who, as we know at this point in time, he's a real killer. Anyhow, so that was apparently a very entertaining fight. I'm going to try to get around to watching that one myself. Des, why don't you give us your thoughts on that one and run us through the rest of that undercard?
Justin, is Matlock the doctor come investigator?
No, Matlock is a
lawyer.
I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I don't know if y'all have ever seen the Andy Griffith show.
Fuck yeah.
Well, I
think I've seen Matlock.
It's
like daytime TV over here, Matt.
Yeah. Well, Andy would know.
He's a grey-haired older gentleman.
Andy, Matt would know. You know Mount Pilot in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I live in Pilot Mountain.
Oh, there you go.
Right.
I live about 10 miles from where Andy Griffith was born and raised. So I love Andy Griffith. But Matlock is the show where he's just a really top level defense attorney in Atlanta, and people get on to me about that shit because I don't watch the new shows. I've never seen any of the new shows on Hulu or Netflix. People talk about, like, what are you watching? I'm like, I'm watching Matlock. I'm watching, like, Andy Griffith. I'm watching, like, the Jeffersons. I have no idea what these new shows are. There's so many that so I always when I'm watching boxing, if the fight's not keeping my attention, I always have in the corner one of my random shows. Like I love all the British shows too. I love Father Brown. I love Only Fools and Horses. I love all those shows.
Yeah.
So I'll watch something like that in the corner while I'm watching Father
Do
Brown.
you get the humor with Only Fools and Horses? Do you understand the slang and the do you understand it, Justin?
Yes, I do. I do get it. I enjoy that show a lot. I think it's set like that one episode where they're talking about me and Millwall fans. I guess it's set right there somewhere in London, right there. But I love that show. I love Father Brown is another show I've watched 1,000 times. I love that show. I love anything, but I like the old stuff.
What about In the Heat of the Night?
Yes, I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
But my thing is that I don't like anything within the last 4 years. I've never seen. I have never seen Stranger Things. I don't even know what the hell that is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I'm sitting there. I don't care about any of that crap. So yeah, but that's what Matlock is. That's definitely what it is. It's a good show. I'm telling you, we'll have we can start like a Matlock podcast. I've seen way too many episodes of that damn show.
Anyhow, that's great.
And the Golden Girls. I know y'all get the Golden Girls over in England. That is my top. That's my favorite show of all time. I know y'all seen that. That's my favorite. Matt knows the Golden Girls. Yeah. Anyway, we've gotten way off the point we were talking about. But I think he was asking about.
Des, take us through the undercard, please.
Well, the only one we were. I mean, the undercard was what it was. Now, Mark Chamberlain won. We had. Let me just remind myself of it, and I think we had the debut of Delicious Ori.
Yeah.
So
Royce and Barney Smith on there, and one other.
All that was expected to win did win. Delicious Ori, his debut. I said the same about Pat Brown last week. Tick it off. It's done. Get it out of the way. But Ori's clearly not a puncher, and he's a bit stiff. He was loading up. He was looking for it, and I think he needs to loosen up a little bit more. And he needs to perhaps not put so much into every punch and not be so stiff. But I'm assuming all that will come in the next 4 or 5 fights where he's got to relax.
And a lot of people have gone really far with a jab and a right hand, but you don't always have to throw them jab right hand. Throw the left alone. You walk people into your right hand, shove it off your shoulder instead of throwing it hard. There's a whole lot of ways he could have gone about his business with those 2 punches that were a lot better than what he did. It was a very amateur performance in a professional ring, but plenty against the competition.
So he's probably what he's. You would say he's raw 15. He's way away for you would even put him versus the TKV guy. I mean, he's. I think you're right.
What I would say, Justin, is similar to what I said about Richard Torrez. These big guys, they can flat to deceive any amateurs, and perhaps if you speak to Ruben in our chat, he does he's very up to speed with a lot of the local, a lot of amateurs and the amateurs that are doing very well at the moment, and he'd probably be better to speak about it than what I would. But there's some of these heavyweights that go into these tournaments, and you get a mixture of very good or very bad, and we don't quite know where Ori is, where he is on that barometer. So the next 12 months will tell us, a bit like Richard Torrez. We've got to develop this kid that might be the biggest of his age group, coming up for his teens, into his early 20s, finding his way. And now he's got to transition into the pros. So the first one's always going to be difficult. He's tense, he's uptight, he's loading up, he's a bit stiff. He's trying to impress. He's probably sold 200 or 300 tickets. He wants a pat on the head from everyone. He's got to drop all that now. But same what I said about Pat Brown last week. The debut's out of the way now. Move on. But I want to see a lot of improvement from Ori, because what I saw last night, it might just be another big fella coming out of these elite sports programs that probably isn't geared up for professional boxing. But It's very early days, and we'll see over the next 12 to 18 months. But nothing jumped out at me, Justin. I didn't look at that performance and think, wow, he's particularly good at one thing. It looked pretty bang average, if I'm honest.
He looks the part. He has the. I mean, he's got the name. He has the look. But you're right. I don't think the substance is there. And he just needs he needs a Wilder program. You just summed it up earlier. We don't need to see him for a year or so.
We don't need to see him.
He needs to be fighting. He needs to be fighting in some random place where nobody sees him, and he needs to pull the Wilder. Because, like you said, Wilder was fighting 400-pound guys in like a bar in Alabama. Like, that's the kind of stuff you need where, like, nobody's going to pay attention. And if you don't look good, nobody cares. Nobody's going to be on a podcast talking about you because they didn't even see you fight. And then when you show up 2 years from now, you're going to be a little bit more – because there's something to work with. I mean, you can maneuver him into a decent career. He has the looks. I think he's got something, but he just needs a lot of work. I mean, we should have never actually seen him on TV last night at all.
And what doesn't help with these things is because he's been given a signing on fee and they're trying to create a pathway to some sort of area belt, English belt or British title over the next 18 months, and they want to build him on TV. The commentary team, they're given a script. And they're constantly talking about, what a big puncher he is, how good he looks, he's moving really well, how great he was in the amateurs. When I just miss Reg Gutteridge or Harry Carpenter or Jim Watt, just saying it quite clearly, saying it as it is. There's a lot of work to be done. He's not throwing that jab as quickly as he should do. He's not as smooth as we expect him to be. Just give it to us. Don't insult our intelligence. And that's kind of the pressure that networks put on these kids. I agree with you, Justin. Something we spoke about before with a lot of these big guys. He shouldn't be on TV. We shouldn't be seeing him. He should be fighting very early on the card or on another card, getting him out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then next month, and then a month after that, and then we'll get to know Ori over the next 18 months.
Because these commentators, they don't realize they're actually screwing these guys over. They're hurting them more than they're helping them. Because you got all these fans that don't know, and they're sitting there thinking, "Oh my God, we got delicious Oreo. He's going to be the next Joshua. Look at him. And then when he gets completely destroyed in 5 fights from now,
correct,
he's going to be like expectations. Like I said, they don't understand. We know the script, but it's like if I'm doing the PR for these guys, don't talk about how good he's going to be and all the skill. Just say, hey, he's first fight as an amateur. He's, this is a good learning fight for him. You don't have to get into what he's going to be 20 years from now, but that's what they all want to do.
It's kind of like it's like Campbell Hatton was never going to be that good, but by putting him in the spotlight the way that they did, they stunted any upside that he might have ultimately have. Now you have a guy who already has a fair bit of upside, and you're potentially stunting it by making the spotlight too big and too hot for him at such a stage in his career.
Yeah.
Like Rob Kelly, he knows all about the hot spotlight.
Oh, what's going on?
Yeah. Delicious. Wasn't that your original stage name, Delicious Oreo, or am I wrong? I
should have been. Dropped the ball on that.
Son of a bitch.
What's it? I think I was the other way around, wasn't I? Hold on, one sec. Sorry, I'm a bit late, guys. And I missed the last couple of weeks. I just had so much shit on, but so I jump on.
Yeah, damn you for having a life and family, Rob.
Yeah.
What the fuck were you thinking?
Oh yeah, selfish bastard. Did I miss much? I feel like Chuck Bull coming on at this hour.
No, we're fine. We're just So right now we've talked about the top rank card with Torres in that, and we're running through the Joyce card, and we briefly touched on Tim Tszyu. So if you want to grab any of that, you would be up to date, and we would just move on to the Kozak card after we're done wrapping up this undercard.
So you spoke about Adelaide and everything, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, fucking. This kind of had the potential to be a bit of a British domestic dust up that was actually sellable, and it probably would have been if it wasn't on Boxer. I actually could tell the two kids didn't like each other that much. Did a lot of trash talking to build up. there's a couple of ways of looking at it. I remember a couple of years ago when Larry Merchant famously confronted Floyd after the Victor Ortiz fight, didn't he? When it was protect yourselves at all times, but
If I was 50
he
years
said,
older, I'd kick your ass.
"Yeah, kick your ass. You wouldn't do shit. You wouldn't do shit." That was as fucking as classic a moment as that led to. While you look at the fighter and you go, overall, it is protect yourself at all times. Both refs had a stinker in the flash of an eye, didn't they? So Ortiz, remember, it was Joe Cortez had a stinker when Ortiz fucking leaned his head in, and he headbutt Floyd, and he took the point off. And while they were still kind of apologizing to each other, as Larry Merchant family said, Floyd poked him, didn't he? He poked him like he knew what he was doing. It was a cheap shot. He fucking said, "All right, you headbutt me, here you go." But the Adelaide one was a little bit different than that because it wasn't I think the other kid's ahead in the fight, like, and looking like he's going on to have probably the biggest victory of his career. And Adelaide, while it is protect yourself at all times, I think he saw his moment and just fucking clipped him, didn't he? Like, and maybe he's not thinking in a split second. It all happens very fast, but the ref is to blame on both. For putting the fighter in danger, because it is protect yourself at all times, but the referee has a duty of care to protect the two of them as well. And the way he was shouting break, he was shouting it from a distance with two heavyweights. You got to fucking get, like, old Mills. You think about poor old Mills, what's he been, like, fucking 8.5 stone, 9 stone? Like, he used to fucking jump in the middle of two big heavyweights. He'd be fucking
correct.
He'd be nearly in the middle wrestling the two of them, like, fucking making sure that they were okay and that they weren't hitting on the break and that they fucking listened to his commands. Your man's a bit wishy-washy. He's like, break. Two big fucking guys.
He was very wishy-washy, correct.
Two big 18, 19 stone guys break, and then he grabbed one of their arms. Like, I'm fucking like, that's not. The refs don't want to have a fucking look at themselves like there. Like, that's it. That's get between them. Put your fucking two arms between them and make sure that they separate. Like, that's the only. Like, I know it's different.
If me and you was in the ring, smashing the life out of each other, and there's a little fella in between us, the first thing he does is puts his arm between us and shouts, "Stop boxing!" And that's it. You stop boxing.
And you take a step back, and that's fucking
that's right.
Like, he's walking around the side, he's on the wrong side of them. He's shouting break, he's slapping one of the guys. Like, when the fighter, is very difficult for him to know what to do in that situation. Like, does he listen to the ref or does he keep punching? Like, it's very, and he has that little bit of inexperience. I mean, I think they'll have to fucking run this back, won't they? Like, there's only the only kind of logical fight for the two of them out there now is they'll make it probably a couple of quid against each other again. They can shit talk it and sell it as their, retribution for either the right guy wins, gets his moment, or the other guy was always going to beat him. So they have the kind of little bit of a narrative set up for the rematch. But yeah, in terms of Joyce and Hrgovic, I sound so fucking cynical and jaded these days when I'm talking about fighters and discussing fights. But like the people that are around the boxers never will tell the boxer that it's time to quit, or I don't think you should continue, or maybe you could look at a career in punditry. Obviously, you're not going to say that to Big Joe Joyce. People would turn off the fucking TV if he was doing the punditry. Like, but I don't know what's worse for him at this stage of his career, like a brutal knockout in the first couple of rounds, or getting beaten on points where he's just shipping shots all night long over 12 rounds. He's already sustained a massive amount of damage. It was fun at the start. Like, remember pre-COVID, everyone was like, "Joe Joyce will give them all a run for it." Like, Joyce will fucking give Joshua a run for it, give Fury a run for it. How do you beat Joe Joyce? I think Father Time beat him over the time, didn't it? Like, and he never really got to reach the pinnacle of the mountain. And now it's just, you're just looking at him fucking shelling shots. Like,
that plus
that's
Zhang,
not pretty.
That plus Zhang.
The Zhang one was horrible. Yeah.
He's such a tank of a fucking man, and you're like Joyce. You had to be just so used to being the largest man in the ring. Like, how often did somebody dwarf you in the ring when you're Joe Joyce, and then you're in there against a guy who does. And he's not an athlete to change his style and like move and bounce on the outside.
No.
So he slugs it out with this fucking 7-foot animal with toasters for hands.
Yeah, and it's just I think you saw the in real time the effect that had on him, and I think since then he's just looked shaky. Like, now you look at him like you think he's in that position where he wants to fight again. We're like, why? Like, is it the money? Like, because the money's not going to be worth the fuck to you if you keep going and you're going to be fucking drinking through a straw for the rest of your life. Like, it's not. if it's the money, I somewhat get it, but like, I mean, he's on the wrong side of fucking. He's pushing 40 now, isn't he, Joe Joyce? Like, so he's not going to be. The heavyweights are tied up. He's not going to be on the landscape to even get an eliminator to make himself mandatory for any of the belts. Like, he's firmly in gatekeeper territory, and I don't think that's nice for Joe Joyce. I think he should probably retire. Like, I don't know what's going on there, but it's not nice. I thought it's a bit sad.
Farewell with the Jay McFarlands of the world, right? And let him
or
go
Dempsey
off into
McKean
the
or someone
sunset.
like that, like, or fucking something like that.
I think McKean could potentially beat him.
Maybe. Like, I don't know, but
I think he might be that.
there's probably guys. There's guys out there he could beat, but it's somewhat like it feels a bit like watching the Derek Chisoras of this world now as well. Watching, like, there's people always that cheer him on and go, "Good old Del Boy, he's a great character for the sport. He's so brave. He always brings it. Yeah, he's bringing CTE home every fucking time he gets in there. You're knocking fucking shit out of him. He's racking up the money in the bank and losing brain cells."
Is this a good time to tell you we're working on having a Don Charles interview?
I mean, I'll probably tell you himself that. Like, I don't know, like, but he's a very honest man. Like, again, there's people around the fighters. Fighters make their own decisions. Everybody fucking knows what they're getting into. But I think when you see heavyweights in the twilight of their career getting beat up, it's not pleasant. Like, is it? Like, so I think no, and I don't think there's any upside for Joyce in the division going forward. Is what I'm saying. Like, I can't see a reason why he'd hang around where just to be a gatekeeper. Like, unless he's on a fucking few Saudi paydays where the money's gone up and he's like, fuck it, I might as well try and get some of this.
But against who, right? It's just
That's
like,
it, like,
who you have so much concern.
Chisora, Dillian White, I guess. There's always fucking Dillian White and Derek Chisora, isn't there? Like, there's always there's never a lost op, like, when the two boys are still active. So maybe we'll see them out once more time, but I have no interest in seeing it. It's fucking horrible.
And did you catch the heavyweight stateside?
The Torres one? No, I didn't. I don't even know the result.
Well, it was a decision for Torres. Real sloppy fight. You saved yourself, Rob. So don't be feel bad about that one.
Is that starting to make sense that why he was kind of matched so slowly on the way up? Because he seemed to be extremely dynamic, extremely marketable, powerful puncher. Has he got limitations that are going to stop him going all the way to the fucking?
I think it's an issue of last night. What we really saw at the end of the day was what could really happen a whole lot in this heavyweight division of big men who are orthodox fighters fighting a 6'2" southpaw. I mean, it was just sloppy. It's stylistically, it doesn't make for a lot of good fights in the division, Rob. Like, it's so hard. He's an athlete. He's a better athlete than most of these guys, but
I think it's the kind of sign of the times with the kind of popcorn culture that we have now, like, where it's like you just you won't accept kind of a deviation from the prospect on the journey up. Do you remember, like, back in the days when you'd be following someone's career and they get like a stinker of a fighter and you'd have to watch him navigate the landscape, and it wasn't pretty, but you go, oh, do you know what? Like, that guy makes it fucking awful for everyone. So you understand it. I think these days, if you see somebody and they're made look bad, you just instantly fucking write them off. Like, what I do anyway. I'm kind of fickle, like, but I always kind of thought with Torres that they were moving him a little bit slow because it was time for action. Like, there was no shortage of heavyweight fights for him, no shortage of people he could fight. Why are they fucking moving him so slow? Like, but maybe they're waiting for the landscape to clear at the top and the new breed to come through. He's certainly been exciting anytime I've seen him up to this, but maybe just a bad night at the office. Like,
yeah, we'll see how it all goes. It was an interesting enough fight in its own way, but yeah, you didn't miss a whole heap and heck of a lot there. But I guess at this point in time we can move on to the fight in Kazakhstan with Janibek Alimhanallah taking out I forget his first name, Ngasambe, I believe this is his last name, in 5 rounds. And a dude who could actually take a punch at the end of the fight was Alimhanallah landing 2 really hard left hands, knocking this dude's head like a Pez dispenser. He goes down. You think he's going to be flattened for like a fucking knockout of the year candidate. And like up he goes. And you're like, the referee just looks at him like, no, we're not going to let this keep going. Good call. Any other fighter knocked out fucking cold, I think, off of those shots. And Gasambe just went down like one of those blow-up clowns that used to you remember those toys, Justin? Those clowns used to blow up and you'd punch them and they just couldn't fall. They'd go completely horizontal and up they come. That was basically Ngasambe. I mean, because those left hands, those were vile, and up he went. It wasn't necessary after that, though. Good job by the ref, in my opinion.
Yeah, this was Janibek did what you're supposed to do when you fight these random guys who should never have gotten a title shot, but the division sucks so bad that he gets to fight for a unified, undisputed middleweight championship of the world. When you know how trash this fight was when they said that he was just kind of floundering in the local French scene, and then he gets a title shot. He was just like he was just kind of getting by the local French middleweight scene, and then he gets to fight for the undisputed title. So that's how bad it is.
I can't think of one other French middleweight apart from Marcel Cerdan, and he was around in the fucking 50s. So I don't know.
That's why I'm saying how bad it was. They were like, yeah, he's just been floundering, but he gets this big opportunity. I'm like, good. I mean, I don't even know where they dragged this guy from. The only thing you can say about him about this fight is you just said it. He was tougher. He was tough, and Janibek did exactly what he should have done. Janibek probably needs to move up. There's nothing left for him to do at 160. Look at it. Look at the guys they're fighting.
Unless he can get a unification against Adamas or who else?
Yeah, but even then, that money can't be great for a Adamas fight, even though it's for all the belts. I would just go up. I mean,
you would have to think his star's a little bit higher after that Shiraz fight. I think because especially
you're right, but still, I mean,
public thought he won.
I think Janibek is like they said he's really tight though at this weight too. I mean, so it's. Do you want to? I mean, if I were him, I would. Because look at but is this one of the worst unified reigns we've ever had? I mean, this guy holds 3 of the 4 belts and has fought just god awful trash. And I hate to say that about fighters because they beat the hell out of me, but I'm just saying, looking back in the last history of the middleweight, this guy has done nothing. And Janibek's decent, but it's not like he's anything special. I wish that the middleweight, they need new blood. They need something to happen because it's not good right now. It's disappointing that we have to.
Shiraz as well, shouldn't it? Like if he was,
it should be.
If he was what they said he was, exactly. Yeah. It should have been. It was the landscape was there for him, but maybe again question marks over his matchmaking. But it don't matter because he just have Turkey fucking tell him he's 2 rounds behind or whatever. Tell the judges that he's fucking telling the judges scorecards while he's fighting. Yeah, the middleweights are so poor. We've hammered this topic, but it has to be said. Like every time you see 160, you used to be so excited about 160, and the 160 champion was such a fucking prestigious title. Now it's just like, what does the middleweight champion of the world mean at this day and age? Not much. Like, so hopefully they do get some stars there coming back up because 154 is kind of loaded, isn't it? Like, so you'd even think like a good 154 pounder might be able to move up now, take all the fucking smoke there with one of the champions. Like 154 is kind of stacked. Like,
well, here's the question for you: if Crawford didn't go up to Canelo, I think he would clean out the middleweight. I mean, as far as just talent wise,
Ali Manala is the only person who's a real fight for him. I think that everything that he does is Carlos Adames' kryptonite ultimately.
Well, here's the bad thing about it: the middleweight Charlo wasn't anything credible, but he was better than most of these guys, and he just whatever.
At least he was exciting. Like he'd be. They're always like barking and animated and pumped up the Charlos.
Hey, a little too animated because they end up beating their family members at a party at their house. So maybe there's a little too animated. Is that what they got in trouble for? Is that didn't they beat
one of them?
One of
beat their family member or something.
One of them fought with the other one's wife, or so wasn't one of the wives beat up the other one's wife or something, or one of the wives beat up the other one's ex-wife, something like that. But they used to entertain me just from the sheer kind of cringe factor of their tough guy act. Like they had one of the worst tough guy acts in boxing. Like
I think he's coming
which
back.
I'm sure they are tough guys, but
I think the middleweight version's coming back. I never could keep clear which Charlo
I
was
think
which.
he's supposed to fight at 168 though, and they're trying to get him in with Charlo, so he relinquished the WBC belt.
So he's the one coming back now.
With. Yeah, so so that's what's going on as far as that goes. I don't know. Ali Mahanallah, as you said, it's been a very disappointing title reign for him as far as it goes. But he's a very skilled fighter at the end of the day. The problem is, Des, there just hasn't been a good measuring stick for him.
No, he's found himself in a barren division, and he's not, much of a personality, and he's from that part of the world. It's not. There's a little bit of a disconnect. No disrespect. Rob said it. We've done this to death. The middleweights, it needs a few characters from 54 to come up and to rejuvenate it and to add a little bit of spark. But until that time, I'm not quite sure where Janibek goes. Are we going to get a unification undisputed with Lara? That'd be worth watching. That's the fight. That's the fight. Right? At this point, I'd take Amo Williams against Janibek. I'd watch that. At this point, I'd take Carlos Adames against Janibek. But it just seems to be so stagnated. So I don't quite know where they all go unless we see something come up introduced from 54, unless we see Janibek go up to super middle, unless we see a couple of them super middleweight guys come down. I just don't know what's going to happen. It's one of the original 7, and I've never known the middleweight division to be like this. It's barren. It's not got any personality. I don't know much more I can say about it. It is what it is, and we are where we are. Unfortunately, boxing moves on. There's other ways to look at, but yeah, I'd like to see the middleweight division get going again, but I can't see when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Now you're right. If the middleweight division were a woman's womb, it would be a woman's womb who is 60 years old and lives close to a nuclear testing site.
What an analogy.
Very barren.
Very
barren. Yes.
What the fuck has been going on in your brain? I fucking don't know how the fuck you went from there. Unbelievable, that is. Like, that's some shout. Holy shit.
Well, maybe I've been considering the possibility of nuclear war from where I'm sitting, Rob.
Nuclear wombs.
or maybe Matty, maybe it's Justin talking about the Golden Girls before Rob come on. Something's got you in the mood, isn't it?
Take you for me.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
It's funny. It was not funny. I shouldn't say it's funny. It was my mother's 15-year anniversary. There during the week, and it was like I always remember that on the fucking night before I had watched that stinker Bernard Hopkins Roy Jones 2. My mom was a big Golden Girls fan back in the day. We used to watch that together. That was a fucking cracking show, by the way. One of the fucking greatest comedies. Actually, here's one for the listeners who are all young as fuck, and they won't have. Look, it's better than the 160 division. Listen, Golden Girls had a spin-off show. Anyone tell me what it was called?
Golden Palace.
That was the second spin-off show, the original spin-off show. That was the second one. What was the first one called?
Didn't have
Empty
Nest
in it?
Empty Nest. It was about the doctor that lived next door to the Golden Girls. Fucking
it was
work.
Richard
That
Mulligan who was on Soap.
They had the big dog, Dreyfus.
Big Dreyfus, that's right. Yeah. Big Saber. Oh, fucking hell. I'll tell you one thing. That's some shout there for me. Empty Nest. Fucking hell.
This is the second time we've wandered into classic TV territory. And speaking of Richard Mulligan, Justin, if you're not a big fan of the old show Soap, you have fucking missed out, dude. That is one of the best shows in the history of television. And it ended just abruptly at the end of the 4th season on some great shit. But I have seen Soap. Yes, good man. What a fucking show, man. 1978, Billy Crystal is a fucking gay man talking about getting a sex change. Fucking way fucking prescient and ahead of its time. But anyhow, we're gonna end our wandering down TV memory lane and get back to this card with Jalalov getting a win over the man. Rather than trying to remember, they call him the Hulk going in there, but everyone's like, that guy looks like Butterbean. And do you guys know what the Ukrainian translation of Butterbean is? It's
of course we do.
Mesolyanka. All right, so we're gonna call this Mesolyanka is the fighter's name, and this guy was tough. He got knocked down once, he got stung a few times, but he just walked Jalalov down all night long, and he won over the crowd. And it was, I don't know. I was very, very impressed with the Ukrainian butterbean Maslyanka. It was good fun. Did you see it, Rob?
Of course not. Even the way you're describing it now sounds like a figment of my imagination. I haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out.
Tiz, go ahead and take it.
But I do like those kind of fights where somebody's the underdog and then they win the crowd over, even in a so very brave English commentator way. You know that way? I like that.
Yeah, he's just a huge. He is just a huge guy with kept his hands up and forward. He marched Des and right into the oncoming fire.
Matty, I never see it either, mate.
Justin.
Sorry to do that to you.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the fat bastard get beat up for 10 rounds. Well, I like Jalalov, so I was wanting to see him. But yeah, he is the Ukrainian butterbean. He also, I think he's the guy that took Bacoli rounds. Like he's just one of those guys. He's got such a huge fucking head.
He's sturdy.
His neck is like 2 foot around, so he just to take a shot.
He doesn't have a neck. His head
doesn't have a neck,
sits on his shoulders.
He looks like I know, Matt, you know this one. He looks like the fat guy from Silver Street, not Silver, but oh shit, that Richard Pryor movie with Gene Wilder, Stir Crazy.
Yeah.
He looks like the big fat guy from that movie. But yeah, he won over the crowd just because he was just tough, and he just wouldn't get knocked out. But yeah, but that's the fight that we need next. Then if Joyce is going to come back, he needs to fight that guy because neither guy is probably going to get knocked out, and they're just going to beat the hell out of each other for 10 rounds. But yeah, Jalalov was I say disappointing.
Underwhelming. I think underwhelming.
He looked off a little bit. He's another one. I know you asked that question earlier about being in the amateurs too long. Jalalov has definitely been in the amateurs too long.
Well, he makes too much money in those fucking AIBA tournaments or IBA, whatever one.
Well, see, I looked it up. I think they pay him like $3 or $4 million a year to stay semi-amateur. He gets a house. He gets like a car allowance. I mean, why would you go pro? He kind of and when the Olympics allow you to go back and forth, I mean, he's got it made in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan because he's Uzbek, and they just pay you so much freaking money. I wouldn't. Hell,
no, he's got it made. The fuck. It's almost stupid to go get punched in the face by Maslyanka because Maslyanka hurt this guy a couple of times as far as it went. So, a fair play to the Ukrainian butterbean to getting the most out of his appearances in the ring. And at the end of the day, only getting beaten by, the heavyweights of reasonable skill levels. So, fair play to the fat Ukrainian guy. God love him. And we wish him the best. Let's see here. I'll just touch on, and we will go into more specifically the one that we care about here. I'm going to have a card from Canada on Thursday. Normally Justin would watch these, but it's going to be headlined by Mary Spencer, so he's not going to do that, I assume. But there's going to be a Pro Box card going on. It looks like it might end, unless they have the times wrong. It's 12 a.m. God, who freaking knows? It's insane to think of it starting at 12 o'clock on the East Coast, but we'll see. They have it listed for 12 o'clock on the East Coast on Saturday. So it's Jordan White against Matias Romero and Stefan Shaw against Rafael Akpigiori. Great. Another name that I can fucking butcher. Thank you very much to the people at Pro Box for that one. But what we're really excited for is going to be the card headlined by a really fantastic welterweight unification fight between Jerome Boots Ennis and Eimantas Stanionis on the undercard there. Got a couple of decent names on there. We got Shakram Giasov taking on Franco Maximiliano Ocampo. He's got many names of many letters. I know your pain, buddy. Going over 10 rounds at welterweight. Giasov trying to make a name of himself in here in the division that is nearly wide open if you take out Ennis and Stanionis from the fold. Also going to have Raymond Ford and Thomas Matisse in there over 10 rounds at junior lightweight. Arturo Popoca versus Christian Cardo. I might have to do some research on those guys while you're discussing the other ones. Let's talk about those before we get into the main event, which is a fantastic fight. Really looking forward to it. What are your thoughts on Giasov and taking on Maximiliano Ocampo, which you might not know as much about, and then obviously Raymond Ford against Thomas Matisse, a couple of relatively known quantities at the end of the day, particularly Ford. Justin.
Oh,
I think you accidentally muted yourself again.
Oh, who did GSL fight last?
I don't know. Let's go take a look at that one.
You'd have the box rig up. I'm trying to remember.
No, I was looking on ESPN there. Freaking. The problem with the box rec schedule is the fact that there's, fights from fucking everywhere on there, and it's hard to get between all of them at the end of the day. Let's see here. Giasov's last fight was against Miguel Parra, split decision over 10.
Okay.
He was constructed at 1 point for a low blow. Yeah, and that's an interesting one on there. A 22-4-1 guy. I'm trying to see if I remember that fight. I think I do remember watching that fight. It's just one of those that, not particularly warm in the memory at the time. But yeah, I mean, you look at the guys that the Cats lost to. I mean, they all had one loss or no losses at the time. So yeah, I mean, give Giasov maybe some benefit of the doubt there, but he's just been kind of limping his way towards a title opportunity at the ultimately, Justin, and it hasn't made a name for himself by any stretch.
I mean, that sounds like majority of the people we've talked about today. Just kind of limp to get there, and I don't know. Sometimes it bugs you because I think Ennis. This is not the best undercard they probably could have put together. I think the main event's the only fight that people are really going to be running to watch. But I know I've seen these guys. I'm blanking on Ocampo.
I tell you, Giasov's opponent, he's fought freaking nobody, basically. He has 2 losses, and one of them was a technical decision in 8 out of 9 rounds. That's odd. Against 11-1 Brian Damian Chavez. Yeah, that looks like it was in Argentina. He received a standing count in the first round and down in the second. Let's see here. Chavez was down in the 8th and deducted 1 point also in the 8th for a headbutt before seconds.
I got him confused with Carlos.
Yeah, you are. After Ocampo was cut. I got to find that fucking fight because that sounds like a shit show.
No, you're right. I've got that Ocampo confused with Carlos Ocampo.
Yeah. You really would have no reason to know this guy. So I got to tell you, if Giasov doesn't run through this dude.
Yeah, Giasov should. I just know the Carlos version. I don't know who the hell this guy is. I don't think anybody does, but
yeah.
And then you got Arturo Popoca.
Yeah, let's see.
We've seen Christian Carto fight. I've never seen Popoca fight.
He's fought a couple of guys with decent records recently. 15-0 and a 21-1 guy, a majority and a split decision in those though. Carto, 23-1. Who has he lost to? He was stopped by 22-10 Victor Ruiz. You worry about that a little bit. I don't know if you have seen him. I'm looking at his record and it's not really any names on there. Yeah, it would be. You would have had to have really been looking in some obscure places to find it. But you know what, Justin? If anybody would have found the Christian Carto, it probably would be you.
No, I know we've seen him fight because I think he's maybe he wasn't a pro box guy, but he was on one of these random cards. I think you're right. The only fights that are really worth anything are going to be the main event and the co-main event. The other ones are kind of straightforward from what I'm looking at here. I think the top 2 are the only ones that are really going to interest anybody.
Yeah, and Matisse went with Rocky Hernandez. That one also went to a technical decision only through 6 rounds. And he was he lost unanimously, but he was down 58-56. So, I mean, 4 rounds to 2 after 6 rounds. And if I remember it, I thought he was quite in that fight. And he's Yeah, I mean, that's a capable guy. He was on a run after he lost to Melendez, which was kind of an upset in the eyes of many. But he went on a run, beat a couple of undefeated guys in Christian Tapia, Ramiro Cesena. I think I remember that fight, getting the stoppage in the 10th round there. Might have been down on the cards on that one too. He was. Yeah, I do remember that fight. And then beating Cesar Juarez in the last round there too. That's interesting. So I'll tell you what, yeah, again, Thomas Batiste is a good fight. And this is an interesting test for Raymond Ford, to be honest with you, who is still getting his feet wet at 130 pounds. Rocky Hernandez is a capable enough fighter. If he would have just backed the fuck off of O'Shaquie Foster in the 12th round and not gotten knocked out, he would have, been a champion, if you remember the cards in that one.
Yeah, I remember that was the really good fight where O'Shaquie got him late, wasn't it?
Yeah, 12th round.
That was
round,
a really good. So that was a really good fight. We hadn't seen much from him in a while either.
No, he was just out like a month ago. It was on a card in Canada randomly, and he picked up a unanimous decision.
Yeah, they really dragged him out of nowhere then to throw him up to Canada. Anyway, yeah.
He might not be able to get to the United States anymore.
No, that's another story down the line, but yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. That's that undercard. That's all we got for you. It's the main event. I could see why they didn't stack it. Because, Rob, Boots Ennis and Eimantas Stanionis, this is one of those few fights that look good on paper in a shit lackluster welterweight division. It's really the jab, stability, and I dare to say the experience of Stanionis against, even though Ennis is more fights. Rob, I would challenge you to find a fight on Ennis's resume that's as impressive as the Butayev victory that Stanionis had a few years ago. I think this is a real fight, and I think that the odd makers are very, very in the dark on it if they think that Stanionis is a 9-2 underdog on this one.
Yeah, 9-2 seems long. The only thought behind that might be that Ennis is too big for him and punches too hard. He might put a dent in him. But Stanionis is very, very good off the jab. There was talks a couple of years ago of fucking Conor Benn versus Stanionis, wasn't it? Everyone was like, fucking Stanionis will kill Conor Benn. What are you talking about? Like, he's not fucking, doesn't belong in the ring with him. So this is kind of a purist fight. Like, it's at 47, as you said, which is fucking Ennis's domain now. He should rule the roost, but he is going to go north, isn't he? That's what the talk is. So this might be the Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan will both be having an eye on this, won't they? Like, because the only thing that's going to prevent their fight being upgraded to from an interim championship to a legit world title is that if Stanionis wins, like, which is not outside the realms of possibility, but you'd have to think with all the stuff that Ennis can do at the place he's in his career, that Stanionis might give him trouble for a little while, but ultimately the moves, the skill set, the punching power, the size of him at 47, like, he's a big 47 pounder, isn't he, Boots Ennis? And he's a finisher too.
I don't know that he's any bigger than Butayev though, and Butayev is a fucking tank at the weight.
He's more dynamic though, isn't he? So he's bigger and he punches harder,
Yes.
like, and he moves a lot more as well. So it's a different proposition. I think Ennis is too skilled. And this will probably be his last fight. It's probably going to be his farewell fight at 47 as well. So he needs a big statement to go up and start putting himself in the mix for big money fights, which is what Ennis wants and needs, isn't it? He's gone with Eddie Hearn for the last while. They tried to have him fight at home in Philly, make a bit of a noise about him, and he is. There's without a doubt he's one of the most talented guys in boxing. He's got a very eye-catching skill set, and he can punch. So he has everything. He's maybe not the best talker, but he can't have it all. He's an extremely marketable guy against the right dance partner, but he needs an emphatic victory against Stanionis. He doesn't need a close out the welterweight division. Can't make the weight anymore performance. He needs, like, bam, knock him out, and who's next at 54. Like, so interesting fights to be had for him at 54 once he moves up. Like I said earlier, that's kind of a little bit stacked now, isn't it? Like, so you got your Batsagayev and fucking characters like this. Like, so there'll be some really, really good mouthwatering fights for him at once he goes north. But as I said, I think Crocker and Paddy Donovan will be having an eye on this, because if Ennis sticks to the script and he disposes of Stanionis, then that fight will be upgraded to a world title fight. So, which makes it even bigger, and it's probably going to be here as well. So, big domestic night. But aside from that, I think Ennis he's always been easy on the eye to watch. He's entertaining, eye catching, and he's got a lot of skill. And Stanionis too, man. Stanionis, brilliant jab, tough guy, beats a lot of good guys. So, it might be close, I think, in the first kind of 4 to 5 rounds until Ennis figures him out, and then I think he'll take over in the second half and probably stop him down the line.
Interesting. I tell you, I don't know. This is one of those where I'm just feeling good about, which probably means that Stanionis is going to get knocked out in 2 rounds. But I don't know. Justin, do you think that I would have been better off putting my $10 into a quarter pounder with cheese meal rather than putting it on Amanda Stanionis?
It's a damn shame that the meal costs $10 now. But
I think I'd get the bacon one at least at that price.
I'm like you. I've been going back and forth, but I agree with Rob. I think that Ennis is just going to have too much. I don't think he's going to stop him, but I think if Ennis is anything the way we think he is, Stanionis is going to give him a really good fight, but Ennis will have enough. If Ennis is what we believe he is the whole time. But if Ennis is going to fight more like he did in his last 2 fights, then you're right. Your $10 might actually pay off, because Stanionis does enough that he could get him. I mean, this is not a guy who's not going to show up to win, and Stanionis does have the ability, but I just think Ennis is too slick. I think he's got more. He just offers so much more than Stanionis can. Stanionis is kind of a 1-2 guy. I mean, the jab is really, really good, but I think Ennis is going to be able to handle that. I'm looking at probably 116, 112. There might be a 115, 113 card. I just think that Ennis has to know. He can't be stupid. He has to know that his star has dropped a little bit, and he has to come out with a little bit more. We don't need another 2 fights like he had versus the other guy. He needs to come out and he needs to look good, and he hasn't looked that good in a while, actually. Even before that guy, Ennis hasn't looked really good in a while. He's going to need to be on that Saturday. And I think he knows that. I think they know where he needs to be. And I don't think he'll stop him, but I think he'll win. I mean, I think he'll beat Stanionis. I think it'll be competitive. I just think Stanionis is just going to have a hard time with Ennis' movement, his just overall skill. And so, like I said, probably 116, 112. There might be a close card, but Ennis will know he was in a fight when this is over with, because Stanionis is by far, I think, his best opponent. And so it'll be a good stick. Like I said, he'll move up. But I think he'll get this one.
Yeah, the only opponent that's on both of their resumes, I believe, is Thomas Delorme, and Boots wiped him out in a round, and he went the distance with Stanionis. So I don't know. It's an interesting fight, and I just think that Stanionis paying more than 4-1 as an underdog is absurd. I think this is more of a 2-1 fight. I feel like there's a lot of value on that one, but we'll see. We'll be back here next Sunday to discuss if I was brilliant or if I was an idiot. Typically speaking, I was an idiot. That's just, the name of the game. But hey, so it goes. Dez has hopped out of here. He's been drinking his $300 wine, and I think he's probably might have nodded off in there or something of that nature. But anyhow, it's been fun. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this fight. That's going to be good. We got a lot of other good stuff going on in the month of April here, all working towards that big Friday through Sunday Cinco de Mayo kind of thing going on. Between multiple venues on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's going to be a blast. We got good things coming our way. And this fight, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg of about 30, 45, maybe 60 days that will delight and dazzle boxing fans everywhere. But alas, we're going to bounce out of here. We appreciate everybody for hopping in. Remember, you can check us out at patreon.com/Boxing Asylum and find all and join up with all the good stuff, different levels there. There's different goodies as you go up the ranks. But yeah, anyhow, for all those loyal listeners, we appreciate you folks. And for Dez, Rob Kelly, and Justin, I've been your host, Matt DiGianaro. We'll see you folks next week.
We'll never forget.
Golly, that's good happening.
Go to and move!
We want to be honest, yeah?
Crying like a little bitch. I've never met a fucking wank that can fight me.
I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
You're a fucking bum, you're a fucking asshole.
Rumpo fucking Steltskin.
But allegedly, Oscar Rivas has failed a test.
7-year ain't. 7-year ain't. I won't fucking smash. Fuck you.
I hope you fucking die.
Be safe.
I love Boxing Asylum. It's as simple as that.